Hey there, tonight we're diving into the art of Roman leisure in the 1st century, where reclining at a feast might just be the most exhausting part of your day. And yes, even an empire has laundry to worry about. If these stories help you unwind, I'd love a quick like or subscribe, but only if they're genuinely working for you. I'm curious where in the world you're listening from, so drop your location and local time in the comments. It's amazing seeing our little community span the globe through these historical tales. Now get comfortable, perhaps dim the lights, or find that perfect pillow position, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken to the gentle murmurs of a slave, whose job is to ensure you're not late to the daily spectacle that is Roman life. The sun is just starting to peek over the terracotta rooftops, and the villa is already buzzing with activity. Welcome to your morning in a 1st century Roman villa, a place where luxury and practicality engage in a constant tango. As you shake off the remnants of sleep, you're immediately aware of the sheer opulence surrounding you. This isn't just any home, it's a villa, an architectural marvel that screams, "I'm richer than you." The atrium is your first stop, the heart of this Roman domicile. Here you find an impluvium, a sunken part of the floor designed to collect rainwater. Ah, Roman engineering, making even precipitation posh since, well, forever. Take a moment to appreciate the marble columns, because these aren't just for show. Marble is the 1st century equivalent of a luxury car parked in the driveway. It's a status symbol, and boy, do you have status. The Romans loved their marble like you love your morning espresso. Imported, expensive, and utterly indispensable. But don't be fooled by the grandeur. Maintaining such opulence is no small feat. The cost of frescoes and mosaics that decorate your walls, easily into the thousands of sesterces, enough to make even the most extravagant modern home renovation seem like child's play. Speaking of frescoes, they're not just random wall doodles. These colorful artworks are a mix of mythological scenes, landscapes, and whatever else screams, "I have taste." Creating these masterpieces requires not just artistic skill, but also a small army of laborers. It's a full-time gig, and a costly one at that. In today's terms, think of it as having a personal artist on retainer, because you can. As you wander further into the villa, you enter the triclinium, or dining room, the epicenter of your social life. Here, you and your guests recline on couches, a decadent affair that turns the simple act of eating into an event. The room is designed to impress, with mosaics underfoot that tell intricate stories, each tile laid with painstaking precision by craftsmen who spent weeks, if not months, on their knees. Those mosaics aren't just art. They're a conversation starter, a way to humble brag about your intellect and connections. Now, let's step into the peristyle garden, a slice of pastoral heaven, right in the middle of your villa. This garden is the place to be when you want to escape the hustle and bustle of Roman life. Lush greenery, trickling fountains, and meticulously arranged flora create a serene atmosphere, a stark contrast to the often chaotic world outside. The garden serves a dual purpose. It's both a private retreat and a public display of wealth, a testament to your ability to cultivate beauty in every corner of your life. While you're surrounded by such splendor, it's easy to forget the economic machine that keeps this villa running. The cost of maintaining this lifestyle is steep, and it's not just about the occasional fresco touch-up or mosaic repair. It's about the daily grind of managing slaves, sourcing fine goods, and keeping up with the Joneses, or in this case, the Julii. Your villa is a microcosm of the Roman economy, a living testament to the wealth generated by trade, conquest, and the relentless drive for social status. But let's not romanticize the villa life too much. Beneath the marble and the mosaics lies a harsh reality, the relentless labor that fuels this opulence. The Roman economy is a beast, and it's built on the backs of those who have no choice but to serve. Slaves, artisans, and laborers form the invisible foundation of your luxurious life. So while you enjoy your morning stroll through your villa, remember the true cost of such splendor. In the grand scheme of things, your villa is more than just a home. It's a statement, a testament to Roman architectural prowess and the social stratification that defines your era. It's a place where wealth and power intersect, where beauty masks the stark realities of the economic engine that drives the empire. As you start your day in this 1st century wonder, take a moment to ponder the layers of history, labor, and ambition that make up the walls around you. After all, Every mosaic tile and marble column tells a story, one that is as complex and multifaceted as the empire itself. But before you get lost pondering the layers of history held between those marble walls, let's turn our attention to something more immediately pressing: breakfast. Now, don't get too excited. This isn't a Roman banquet fit for a toga-clad Bacchus. Instead, prepare for a meal that's more practical than opulent. Welcome to the humble breakfast of a Roman villa, a modest affair of bread and cheese. Ah yes, the Roman diet, a topic as rich in myths as it is in flavor. If you've been led to believe that every Roman meal was a Herculean feast of epic proportions, brimming with exotic fruits and endless goblets of wine, prepare to have your grape leaves stripped away. In reality, most mornings start with a simple slice of panis, that's fancy Latin for bread, and a modest helping of Cassius, cheese. The bread, likely made from emmer wheat, a grain that's been around since the dawn of agriculture. It's sturdy, reliable, and not quite the artisanal sourdough that dominates your Instagram feed. This breakfast isn't just about filling your stomach. It's a reflection of the Roman emphasis on frugality and function. After all, life in the villa isn't just about lounging around admiring frescoes. There's work to be done, whether it's managing your estate, overseeing your trade endeavors, or, if you're feeling particularly ambitious, dabbling in a bit of politics. Bread and cheese are the fuel that keeps the Roman engine running, the original power breakfast, if you will. Now, let's talk about where these ingredients come from. You might think that every morsel on your table was plucked fresh from a nearby field, but think again. The Roman Empire was a sprawling entity, and with it came a network of trade routes that made Amazon Prime look like your local corner shop. Your humble breakfast might feature cheese that's a product of local farms, but that olive oil drizzled on your bread. It could have traveled all the way from Hispania, modern-day Spain, journey covering hundreds of miles. And if you want to sprinkle some garum, a fermented fish sauce that's a Roman staple, onto your meal, know that it was considered a luxury, with production centers as far-flung as Gaul and Africa. Garum, by the way, is one of those culinary mysteries that sounds utterly revolting, but was beloved by Roman palates. Made by fermenting fish guts in the sun, it's the umami balm that gives your food that je ne sais quoi, or as the Romans would say, quid est enim hoc. It's a testament to the complex flavors the Romans enjoyed, proving that even the simplest meals had layers of taste that could rival any modern gourmet dish. But let's not get too carried away romanticizing the Roman table. While the elite had access to a world of flavors, the average citizen's diet was much less extravagant. Most Romans subsisted on a diet heavy on grains, legumes, and vegetables. Meat was a rarity, unless you were part of the elite or special occasions rolled around. You see, the Roman economy, much like yours, was subject to the whims of supply and demand. Exotic spices and ingredients were not only expensive, but also a mark of social status. Bringing out the saffron or pepper imported from the East was akin to flaunting a designer handbag. It made a statement. Now, as you chew on that last piece of cheese, consider the agricultural practices that put this breakfast on your table. The Romans were agricultural innovators, mastering techniques like crop rotation and irrigation long before they became buzzwords in modern-day organic farming. The Villa Rustica, or country villa, wasn't just a place for the rich to escape the city. It was a working farm producing the essentials of daily life. Fields of wheat, groves of olives, and vineyards dotted the landscape, each contributing to the economy in ways that would make any economist nod in approval. Agriculture was the backbone of Roman prosperity, the unseen force that made the empire tick. Land ownership was the key to wealth and power, a fact that hasn't changed much over the centuries. For the Roman elite, owning a villa was more than just a status symbol. It was a practical investment, a source of income, and a political tool. As you sip your morning pasca, a diluted wine that's the Roman equivalent of a morning coffee, you're not just enjoying a simple drink. You're partaking in a tradition that underscores the economic prowess of an empire. But let's not forget the human cost behind this agricultural success. The labor of slaves and tenants, often working under harsh conditions, fueled the abundance that graced your table. While the villa life offers a taste of luxury, it's built on the sweat and toil of those who had little choice in their part of the Roman economy. This was a world where power dynamics and social hierarchies played out in every aspect of life. from the grandest feasts to the simplest breakfasts. As you finish your meal, take a moment to reflect on the intricate web of trade, agriculture, and social dynamics that make up the world of a Roman villa. Your breakfast may be modest, but it's a microcosm of an empire, one that's as complex and multifaceted as the society it nourished. And remember, while the myths of Roman dining are deliciously appealing, the reality is far more nourishing, offering insights into the economic and social fabric of an age that continues to captivate us today. Now that you've polished off your breakfast and had your fill of Roman economics, it's time to venture beyond the villa's luxurious embrace and head to the local market. But before you can even think about haggling over figs, let's talk logistics. You see, the villa's location isn't just a stroke of luck, it's a strategic masterpiece. The Romans were meticulous planners, and positioning your villa was as crucial as the marble columns that held it up. Proximity to Roman roads and aqueducts was the ancient equivalent of having great Wi-Fi and a Starbucks on every corner. Picture this: Roman roads, the ancient world's autobahns, stretching over 250,000 miles, connecting every corner of the empire. These weren't just dirt tracks. They were engineering marvels, paved with stone and built to last. Some are still visible today, a testament to Roman ingenuity and their obsession with infrastructure. Your villa, perched conveniently near one of these roads, could be just a stone's throw from Via Appia, Rome's first major highway, built in 312 BCE. This means goods, and more importantly, gossip, can flow effortlessly to your doorstep. And what about those aqueducts? They're the reason your villa boasts running water, a luxury that wouldn't become common in most parts of the world until centuries later. Rome had built more than 11 aqueducts by the 1st century CE, snaking over 300 miles to bring fresh water to the city and its surroundings. They were as much a status symbol as they were a necessity, ensuring that your garden fountains trickle in perpetuity and your baths remain ever ready for a leisurely soak. But enough about infrastructure. Let's dive into the market itself. As you approach, the air is a cacophony of sounds. Merchants hawking their wares, children darting between stalls, the occasional clink of a coin. It's a living, breathing testament to Roman social life and the complexities of their economy. Here, amidst the chaos, is where slaves and freedmen play pivotal roles. In fact, the economy practically runs on their backs. Freedmen, or liberty, are former slaves who have been granted freedom, often by their previous owners. They're the middlemen of Roman commerce, running shops and stalls, and sometimes even managing businesses on behalf of the elite. It's a classic case of social mobility, Roman style, though it's not exactly rags to riches. A freedman might have the chance to climb the social ladder, but they are perpetually reminded of their past by their status. Yet they contribute massively to the economy, bridging the gap between the elite and the everyday citizen. Then there are the slaves, the unseen engines of this market. They're the ones hauling goods, managing stalls, and sometimes even negotiating sales. It's a grim reminder that the Roman economy, for all its grandeur, is built on systemic oppression. But let's not forget the shrewdness of the Roman buyer. They're navigating this market like a stockbroker at the trading floor, always on the lookout for a deal, always conscious of the ever-fluctuating prices. And speaking of prices, let's get into the nitty-gritty of Roman inflation. Just like today, the Roman economy wasn't immune to the whims of supply and demand. Take the infamous edict on maximum prices issued by Emperor Diocletian in 301 CE. Although a couple of centuries down the line, it shows how inflation was a constant threat. Prices could soar, and merchants often engaged in price gouging, forcing emperors to step in and regulate prices, an ancient form of economic intervention that makes our modern monetary policies look positively laissez-faire. But back to the market. You can't talk about Roman commerce without mentioning their obsession with fresh produce. Romans were foodies before it was cool, and the market was their playground. They craved freshness with the zeal of a modern-day organic grocer. The logistics of supplying a villa with the freshest goods was a daily challenge, often involving a network of farmers, traders, and transporters. The elite demanded the best, and this demand fueled an intricate supply chain that sprawled across the empire. You might find yourself haggling over grapes plucked from the vines of Campania, just a few days' journey away, or perhaps you're eyeing a basket of figs from Sicily. These weren't just food items, they were status symbols, each piece of fruit a testament to your reach and connections. The Romans took their produce seriously, and a well-stocked villa was a reflection of both wealth and taste. However, this obsession with freshness came at a cost. Inflation wasn't just an abstract concept. It hit households hard, especially when crop yields were poor or trade routes disrupted. A bad harvest could send prices skyrocketing, leaving even the wealthiest villa owners scrambling to maintain their lavish feast. And let's not forget the political power plays at work. Control over food supply was also a means of control over the populace, a strategy employed by emperors who knew that keeping bellies full was as crucial as keeping the legions loyal. As you wander through the market, consider the delicate dance of Roman commerce. It's a world where social dynamics, economic pressures, and political strategies intertwine, creating a tapestry as complex and vibrant as the mosaics in your villa. This trip is more than just a morning errand. It's a window into the heartbeat of Roman society, where every transaction tells a story. And remember, while the romance of the Roman market is undeniable, it's the reality, the clinking of coins, the bargaining, the strategic positioning of your villa, that truly reveals the empire in all its complexity. So as you make your way back home, laden with goods, take a moment to appreciate the intricate web of trade, infrastructure, and human ambition that makes this world go round. After all, the market is more than just a place to buy and sell. It's the pulse of an empire, a testament to the enduring power of commerce and connection. As you lug your market spoils back to the villa, take a moment to appreciate your afternoon ahead. The Romans, you see, had a knack for mixing business with pleasure, much like a modern work-from-home setup, but with togas and fewer Zoom calls. Once your goods are safely stored, it's time to dive into the quintessential Roman experience, the baths. Ah, Roman baths, the ancient world's social media, where news spread faster than wildfire and reputations could be polished or tarnished in the time it took to soak in a caldarium. Now, let's talk logistics. Roman baths were more than just oversized bathtubs. They were architectural wonders, complex facilities featuring a series of heated rooms and frigidaria, cold rooms for those brave enough to take the plunge. By the 1st century CE, Rome was home to over 170 public bathhouses, not to mention the countless private baths dotting villas like yours. These weren't just places to scrub off the dirt. They were the epicenter of Roman leisure and networking. Picture this: senators, merchants, and ordinary citizens all rubbing clean shoulders, exchanging gossip and glances amidst the steam. The true magic of Roman baths was their role as great social equalizers. For a few sesterces, even the common man could bathe like an emperor, savoring the luxury usually reserved for the elite. Here, in the steamy haze, class distinctions blurred, if only temporarily. It was as if the bathhouse was the original LinkedIn, where connections were forged and alliances formed, all while you were wrapped in nothing but a towel. But let's not romanticize too much. The baths were also hotbeds of intrigue, and let's face it, not the most hygienic places by today's standards. Imagine a spa day where you're just as likely to catch a piece of juicy gossip as you are a skin infection. Yet, the Romans embraced this with zeal, viewing the communal experience as essential to their way of life. It was about both the physical and the social cleanse, a chance to wash away the grime of daily toil and emerge refreshed, ready to take on the intellectual salons that often followed. Which brings us to part 2 of your afternoon, the library. Now, don't picture a quiet nook with a stern librarian shushing you at every turn. Roman libraries were vibrant centers of intellectual life, stocked with scrolls rather than books, and often attached to baths or temples. Think of them as the ancient version of a TED talk, where ideas were exchanged, philosophies debated, and reputations made or unmade. In the 1st century CE, literacy was the golden ticket to social mobility. While not everyone could read or write, those who could held a distinct advantage. Education was a mark of status, a symbol of sophistication. In Rome, literacy rates among the elite were notably high. Think around 10 to 20% for the general populace, but much higher in affluent circles. If you owned a villa, having a personal library was as crucial as having a dining room. It wasn't just a place to house scrolls, but a venue for showcasing your erudition. Speaking of scrolls, let's talk about the content. Roman literature was a mixed bag of history, philosophy, poetry, and scientific treatises. Works by heavyweights like Virgil, Horace, and Cicero were the classics of their day, the Harry Potter and Game of Thrones of the Roman literary world. Owning copies of these texts was a bragging right, a signal that you were in the know, culturally speaking. But be warned, quoting too liberally could make you look like a show-off, akin to dropping Nietzsche quotes at a cocktail party. Now, if you're the host of an afternoon salon, the expectations are high. Your guests aren't just here for the wine and olives. They're here to be dazzled by your intellect. You're expected to lead discussions, perhaps on the latest philosophical trends or the political machinations in the Senate. It's a bit like hosting a modern-day book club, but with more gravitas and far fewer guilty pleasure reads. And let's not overlook the role of rhetoric in all this. Romans loved a good debate, and oratory was the sport of choice among the intellectual elite. Mastering rhetoric was akin to having a law degree and a podcast rolled into one, a tool for persuasion and a platform for influence. Debates could range from the moral philosophies of Seneca to the practicalities of grain supplies from Egypt. It was all fair game, and the more eloquent you were, the higher your social stock rose. But remember, this intellectual engagement wasn't just for show. It was a crucial part of maintaining your social standing. In a society where reputation was everything, being perceived as knowledgeable and cultured could open doors to political opportunities and advantageous marriages. Conversely, being labeled a dilettante could see those doors slam shut faster than you could say, veni, vidi, vici. As you wind down your afternoon, take a minute to appreciate the layers of Roman society revealed through these pursuits. The baths and libraries are more than just leisure activities. They're microcosms of a culture that valued intellect as much as opulence. Here, amidst the steam and scrolls, the Romans pursued a life of balance, where the mind was as important as the body, and social connections were as vital as the finest marble. But don't get too comfortable just yet. There's more to explore before the day is done. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across your villa's peristyle garden, prepare to dive deeper into the complex world of Roman hospitality. It's a world where the evening's convivium promises more than just a meal. It's the final act in the day's grand theater of status and power. But that, my friend, is a story for another time. For now, ponder the ever-present dance between leisure and intellect that defines life in a Roman villa, a reflection of an empire as sophisticated as it is enduring. As the sun dips below the horizon, your villa awakens for its final act. The convivium, a dinner party that's more about who's reclining around the table than what's on it. Forget your casual Friday night dinner with friends. This is Roman dining, a spectacle of excess and etiquette where every morsel served and every word spoken serves a purpose. Step into the triclinium, the dining room where the reclining couches are arranged in a U shape, an arrangement as much about strategy as comfort. The center is left open for entertainment, because what's a feast without a little drama? You, the host, occupy the place of honor, the asterisk lectus medius asterisk, flanked by your most prestigious guests. It's like being the lead in a play, with each guest carefully cast to reflect your social standing. Even the seating is a hierarchy. The closer to the host, the more important you are. Forget putting place cards on the table. Here, the seating arrangement is a silent social commentary. And now, the courses begin. Expect nothing less than a parade of culinary indulgence, starting with the asterisk gustatio asterisk, the appetizer course. Think eggs, olives, and oysters, along with mulsum, a honeyed wine that's as sweet as your social aspirations. But don't get too attached to these delicacies. They're merely the opening act. Next comes the asterisk prima mensa asterisk, the main course where the real culinary fireworks begin. Picture roasted meats, exotic birds, and fish served in sauces that make garum look like ketchup. The cost of a single peacock, upwards of 1,000 sesterces, a sum that could feed a plebeian family for months. But for you, it's not about the cost, it's about the symbolism. Serving such dishes is your way of saying, I'm not just rich, I'm powerful. It's like Instagramming your dinner, but with actual influencers around the table. But let's not forget the asterisk second mensa asterisk, the dessert course. Fruits, nuts, and honey cakes make their appearance, each bite a sweet punctuation to the meal. Here's a fun fact. The Roman palate wasn't fond of sugar, it wasn't even a thing in Rome, but relied heavily on honey, which made everything from wine to pastries feel like an indulgence. Yet, with all this opulence, there's a flip side to the Roman convivium, a side less glamorous but no less significant. While the dining couches might suggest inclusivity, the reality is a rigid social stratification. Your slaves serve the meal, unseen and unheard, their labor essential yet invisible. Even among your guests, the layers of hierarchy dictate the flow of conversation. The closer your couch to the host, the more your voice matters. It's a game of social chess, where every word and gesture is calculated. And what about the entertainment? Forget a DJ or live band. Romans preferred their entertainment live and in your face. Dancers, poets, and musicians fill the air with art and music, each performance a chance to impress or scandalize. If you're really looking to push the envelope, a philosopher might hold court, holding forth on topics as varied as Stoicism or the latest political scandal. Think of it as a TED talk with more wine and less PowerPoint. But let's talk business, because that's what these gatherings are truly about. Beyond the food and entertainment, the convivium is a stage for political alliances and social maneuvering. Deals are struck between courses, alliances forged over wine. It's like the original LinkedIn, but with togas and amphorae. You see, in Rome, power isn't just about wealth. It's about connections, and there's no better place to forge them than at a dinner party. The notion of Roman hospitality, while romantic, is often more pragmatic. The convivium is less about friendship and more about strategy. It's as much a performance as a meal, where every guest, every dish, every speech is a move in a complex game of social chess. Being invited to a convivium is an honor, but it's also a reminder of your place in the social hierarchy. As the evening draws to a close, the guests depart, leaving behind empty dishes and promises of future alliances. You, the host, are left with the task of reflecting on the success of the evening. Did you strengthen your standing? Forge a new alliance? Impress the right people? The convivium is more than just a party. It's a reflection of the Roman world, a microcosm of an empire built on power, prestige, and performance. In the glow of the dying embers, consider how the villa lifestyle is both a product and a driver of Roman culture and economy. It's a world where opulence masks the labor and strategy that sustain it, where the villa is both a home and a stage. The Roman villa isn't just a testament to architectural prowess or economic might. It's a reflection of the society it embodies, one as complex and layered as the mosaic floors beneath your feet. As you retire for the night, remember that the villa, with all its splendor and strategy, is more than just a relic of the past. It's a lesson in the enduring power of connection, the relentless pursuit of status, and the intricate dance of social dynamics. It's a world that, despite the centuries, still speaks to us, whispering stories of ambition, power, and the ever-present human desire to rise above. Sleep well, knowing you've dined not just in a villa, but in the heart of an empire. Your eyes flicker open to the sounds of Athens stirring to life around you. The 5th century BC isn't exactly silent at dawn, especially with the clatter of wooden carts and the occasional donkey bray echoing through the narrow streets. Sunlight peeks through the cracks of your modest abode, promising another day in the bustling heart of ancient Greece. First order of business, breakfast, of course. But don't get too excited. This isn't a modern continental spread. Your morning meal is a simple affair, often just a piece of bread dipped in wine or a handful of olives if you're feeling fancy. If you're wealthy enough, you might throw in a little bit of cheese. That loaf of bread you're holding, it's not as cheap as you'd like. Inflation isn't a 21st century invention, my friend. Thanks to Athens' booming trade and military campaigns, prices have been on a steady climb. A loaf might set you back a drachma or two, which is quite the pinch if you're just an average Joe, or rather, an average Yorgos. As you munch on your breakfast, you can't help but consider the finances. The agora awaits, that buzzing hub of commerce and debate. It's where the action is, but it's also where your wallet might take a hit. Everything from fish to pottery is up for grabs, each stall brimming with the essentials and the not-so-essentials of Greek life. But here's the kicker. The cost of goods isn't just about supply and demand. It's tangled with politics, war, and Athenian pride. Remember the Peloponnesian War? Yeah, that little skirmish isn't doing your grocery bill any favors. Armies need feeding and financing, and guess who indirectly foots the bill? That's right, you do. Once you've had your fill, both of bread and financial woes, it's time to get ready for the day. Personal grooming in Athens is straightforward, but carries its own set of quirks. You reach for your strigil, that curved metal tool essential for scraping off dirt and sweat. Forget about soap. Olive oil is your go-to for cleaning up. You slap some on and scrape it away, leaving your skin as clean as you can manage. If you've got a bit of disposable income, you might even be tempted by some imported perfume, but be ready to cough up a few extra drachmas for that luxury. As you prepare to face the day, you ponder the economic landscape. It's a strange mix of innovation and instability. Sure, Athens is the intellectual powerhouse of the ancient world, but that doesn't mean you're immune to the whims of the economy. You know, the cost of goods is a topic of constant conversation, whether you're sipping watered-down wine at a symposium or chatting with neighbors. The city's prosperity attracts traders far and wide, but it also means prices are as volatile as an Athenian drama. But let's not get too bogged down in economic theory. After all, you've got a day to seize, and Athens waits for no one. You step out into the vibrant streets, the air filled with the aroma of fresh bread and the distant chatter of merchants setting up shop. The sun is climbing higher, and the city is waking up, ready for another day of philosophy, politics, and, of course, the occasional marathon debate at the Phoenix. As you weave through the crowds, you can't help but feel the pulse of a city at the height of its power, a place where ideas flow as freely as the wine. Welcome to a day in the life of an Athenian citizen. As you weave through the crowds, you can't help but feel the pulse of a city at the height of its power, a place where ideas flow as freely as the wine. Speaking of flowing, it's time to make your way to the Phoenix, the beating heart of Athenian democracy. Well, if you're a free male citizen, that is. Yes, Athens is the birthplace of democracy, but let's not get too starry-eyed about it. The political scene here is less an inspiring forum of egalitarian debate and more a testosterone-fueled wrestling match with words. The Phoenix is where the magic happens, or at least that's what Pericles wants you to think. He's the guy who's been steering the Athenian ship. He's quite the orator. Think of him as the ancient world's equivalent of a rock star politician. The Phoenix, a large open-air theater of sorts, is where some 6,000 eligible citizens gather to flex their democratic muscles. But hold your kudos for a moment, because this democratic process comes with some hefty asterisks. For starters, only about 20% of the population actually gets a say. Women, slaves, and medics, foreigners, even if you've lived in Athens for years, can only watch from the sidelines if they're lucky. Your walk to the Phoenix is a brisk one. It's a bit of a hike from the Agora, about 5 kilometers, give or take a few stumbles over cobblestones. As you approach, you pass by sculptures and shrines, each a testament to the city's love affair with gods and glory. But let's not get sidetracked by the art. There's politicking to do. The Phoenix is set on a hill, a deliberate choice to remind you that democracy is an uphill battle. Literally. Once you arrive, you're greeted by a cacophony of voices, each vying to be heard over the others. Here, every man is his own politician, and the debates are as heated as the Mediterranean sun. While the assembly is theoretically egalitarian, some voices carry more weight than others. Wealth and influence can grease the wheels of democracy just as effectively in ancient Athens as they do today. It's not uncommon for wealthier citizens to sponsor public projects or fund festivals, buying a bit of goodwill and perhaps a more attentive audience when they speak. The agenda today, debating whether to continue funding the war effort, among other things. The Peloponnesian War has been a drain on the city's resources, and opinions are as divided as ever. Some argue for peace, while others insist on pressing on, convinced that victory is just around the corner. You listen as one speaker after another takes the platform, each trying to sway the assembly with a mixture of logic, rhetoric, and occasionally outright emotion. But let's not forget about the political spin. Ah, yes, even in ancient Athens, spin doctors are hard at work. Speakers often weave elaborate tales, peppering their arguments with references to the gods or famous battles. It's theater, plain and simple, and the crowd eats it up. There's a certain romantic appeal to the idea that the gods are on your side, even if reality is a tad more complex. Meanwhile, the absence of women in this scene is glaring. Athenian society is decidedly patriarchal, and women are expected to manage the home and family, not the state. And the slaves, they keep the city's economy churning, unseen and unheard in the political arena. The irony of a democracy built on the backs of those who have no voice is as palpable as the dust kicked up by the crowd. But let's not wallow in cynicism for too long. Despite its flaws, there's something undeniably compelling about this early experiment in self-governance. The idea that everyday citizens can shape the destiny of their city is revolutionary, even if it's only a select few who get the privilege. And while not everyone has a vote, the decisions made here ripple through Athenian society, affecting every corner of the city. By the end of the assembly, you're left to ponder the nature of democracy itself. Is it truly the voice of the people, or just a game of influence and power? The truth is, it's a little bit of both. Athens may not have perfected the art of governance, but it's a start. A messy, chaotic, and utterly fascinating start. As you make your way back down the hill, the sun setting over the Acropolis, you can't help but feel a sense of wonder at this grand experiment. The city is alive with potential, a place where ideas are born and tested. And while the path to true democracy is riddled with obstacles, it's a journey worth taking. So, keep your chin up and your eyes open, because in Athens, the next big idea is always just around the corner. As you leave the Phoenix behind, the Acropolis looms in the distance, a stone testament to Athens' ambition. You're ready to dive into the city's cultural heartbeat, where art and intellect collide in a symphony of marble and debate. But before we get too lost in the romantic notion of Athens as the cradle of Western civilization, let's not forget that it's also a city of sweat and toil. The Parthenon, that iconic symbol of Athenian greatness, didn't just spring up overnight with a wave of Pericles' hand. Let's break down the facts. Construction of the Parthenon began in 447 BC and took a solid 15 years to complete. Imagine a project today dragging on for that long. Public outcry, anyone. But back then, this was a monumental feat of engineering and artistry. The cost, a staggering 469 silver talents, equivalent to several $1 billion today. That's right, this wasn't just a temple, it was a statement piece, a marble-clad flex of Athenian power. And what about the labor force that made it all happen? You've got your craftsmen, stonemasons, and a hefty contingent of slaves. Slaves, you say? That's right. The Parthenon wasn't just a triumph of art, it was also a grim reminder of the human cost of greatness. These workers quarried massive blocks of Pentelic marble, each weighing in at a whopping 22 tons. Picture this, teams of men, sweat dripping, heaving these behemoths up the hill. No cranes, no forklifts, just sheer muscle and determination. But let's not get too bogged down in the details of labor logistics. At the end of the day, those columns didn't just support a roof, they upheld ideals. The Parthenon was more than just a temple to Athena. It was a canvas for Athenian identity. Its decorative sculptures, crafted by the renowned Phidias, depicted scenes from mythology and Athenian life, an artistic Instagram feed capturing the essence of a civilization at its zenith. Now, if you're thinking that this project was all about religious devotion, think again. This was politics in stone. The Parthenon stood as a colossal in-your-face to Athens' rivals, a flaunting of wealth and cultural superiority. And while we're at it, let's debunk the myth of the pristine white marble. Time and weather have bleached it, but in its prime, the Parthenon was a riot of color, garish by today's standards, but a feast for the ancient eye. As you stroll past the Parthenon, its columns casting long shadows in the midday sun, you descend into the Agora, a bustling marketplace and intellectual battleground. This is where Socrates, the original gadfly, plies his trade. Picture him there, sandals worn, tunic slightly askew, bothering anyone who dares make eye contact. His weapon of choice, the relentless question. Socrates is the guy your friends would avoid at a party, constantly challenging assumptions. He's like that friend who insists on reading the terms and conditions before clicking "I agree." His method, the Socratic dialogue, is a conversational minefield. Just when you think you've nailed your argument, he tosses in a new question, unraveling your logic like a loose thread on a tunic. But here's the kicker. Socratic questioning isn't just about being a contrarian. It's about digging beneath the surface, questioning the very bedrock of truth. In a time where gods and myths explain everything from thunder to bad hair days, Socrates dares to suggest that maybe, just maybe, there's a deeper rationale to uncover. His legacy, a generation of thinkers who'd rather question the status quo than blindly accept it. The agora is alive with debate, a cacophony of ideas clashing like cymbals. Philosophers, politicians, and merchants mingle in a chaotic dance of commerce and conversation. Stalls line the square, their owners hawking everything from olive oil to ornate pottery. The economic pulse of Athens beats here, each transaction a tiny cog in the city's grand machine. But let's not forget the backdrop to all this intellectual fervor, the shadow of war. The Peloponnesian War looms large, casting a pall over the city's prosperity. Resources are stretched thin, and tensions simmer beneath the surface. Yet amidst the uncertainty, Athenians continue to engage in the timeless pursuit of knowledge, driven by an insatiable curiosity about the world and their place in it. As you weave through the agora, the sun climbing higher, you can't help but marvel at the paradox of Athens, a city where high ideals clash with gritty reality. It's a place where democracy is both celebrated and critiqued, where art and culture flourish alongside political strife. Athens isn't perfect, far from it, but it's a living, breathing testament to the power of human thought and endeavor, a flickering flame of enlightenment in the ancient world. So as you wander through this vibrant tapestry of life, remember, the glory of Athens is as much about its imperfections as its triumphs. The path to greatness is never straightforward, and the true legacy of this city lies in its willingness to question, to build, and to dream. Keep your eyes open, because in Athens, every street corner holds a new story, every conversation a new revelation. And as the afternoon sun casts long shadows over the Acropolis, you know that the journey through this ancient world is far from over. As the sun begins its downward slide, casting an amber hue over the Acropolis, you find yourself pondering the next stop on this Athenian adventure, the gymnasium. Now, don't let the term fool you into picturing your local fitness center with its shiny equipment and questionable motivational posters. The Athenian gymnasium is more like a blend of a social club, a spa, and yes, a bit of a sweatbox. You make your way through the bustling streets, where the scent of roasted meat mingles with the less than pleasant aroma of the city's many alleys. Reaching the gymnasium, you see it's not just a place to flex your muscles, but a hub of social maneuvering. And let's be real, in Athens, your biceps might just be as influential as your rhetoric. Here, the art of the sculpted torso isn't just about vanity. Physical prowess is practically a currency, a way to climb the social ladder. The Greeks are obsessed with the human form. After all, these are the folks who gave us the Olympics, so you know they're serious about their games. Training here isn't just about strength, it's a demonstration of discipline and virtue. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of networking at a high-powered business lunch, but with more sweat and fewer napkins. The gymnasium itself is a marvel of its time. Picture sprawling open-air spaces lined with colonnades, where athletes train in various sports, running, wrestling, and the ever-popular discus throw. Each section is dedicated to a specific discipline, and there's an unspoken hierarchy among them. Wrestling, for instance, isn't just about brute force. It's a strategic dance, a test of skill and cunning. If Socrates were to pick a sport, wrestling would be his jam, a physical embodiment of his dialectic method. But here's the kicker. While the gymnasium is a place of physical excellence, it's also a hotbed of intellectual activity. Philosophers often stroll through, engaging in debates as heated as the midday sun. This is where Socrates, Plato, and their ilk rub shoulders with the jocks of the ancient world. And the topics, everything from the nature of justice to the best way to roast a chicken. When you're done with a workout, you might even catch a few lines of poetry being recited under the shade of an olive tree. Now, let's talk about those famous Athenian leisure activities. The romantic image of leisurely strolls and philosophical musings is only half the story. The gritty truth. The gymnasium is also a place to see and be seen, a living Instagram feed where your social standing is as visible as your tan lines. It's not just your abs that are on display. Your political connections and family ties are equally scrutinized. Every conversation, every handshake is a potential opportunity or a trap. And let's not ignore the darker side of this social scene. The gymnasium is a male-dominated world where women are conspicuously absent, sidelined to the domestic sphere. Athenian society might be the birthplace of democracy, but gender equality, not so much. Women are expected to run the household, weaving and managing family affairs, while the men engage in their public pursuits. It's a societal structure that leaves much to be desired, and as you flex your muscles here, you can't help but feel the imbalance. The economic underpinnings of this leisure culture are equally fascinating. Maintaining one's physique requires resources that not every Athenian can afford. The wealthy train with the finest oils and equipment, while the less fortunate make do with what they can. It's a microcosm of the broader economic disparities that ripple through the city. The gymnasium, in all its glory, is a reminder that status is as much about wealth as it is about physical prowess. But let's not get too bogged down in the inequities. The gymnasium is also a place of camaraderie and competition, where rivalries are born and friendships forged. It's a testament to the Athenian spirit, a microcosm of the city's relentless pursuit of excellence. Here, every drop of sweat is a tribute to the gods, every victory a small nod to Athena herself. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the colonnades, you realize that the gymnasium is more than just a training ground. It's a crucible where the social, political, and economic threads of Athens intertwine. It's a place where the ideals of the city are put to the test, where the human body and mind are honed in tandem. With the day's training behind you, muscles pleasantly aching, you prepare to leave. The vibrant hum of the gymnasium fades as you step back into the city's embrace, a living tapestry of history and myth. Athens isn't just a city of marble and ideas. It's a breathing entity, alive with the hopes, dreams, and ambitions of its people. And as you make your way through the twilight streets, the warm glow of lanterns guiding your path, you know that the next chapter in this ancient adventure is just a heartbeat away. As you navigate the twilight-drenched streets of Athens, the warm glow of lanterns and the distant chatter of evening revelers beckon you toward a quintessentially Athenian experience, the symposium. Now, before you get carried away by images of toga-clad intellectuals in a grand hall, let's set the scene straight. These gatherings are less about highfalutin discourse and more a heady mix of wine, wit, and the occasional philosophical epiphany. Think of it as a cross between a TED talk and a frat party, with intellectual and debauched playing an intricate game of seesaw. The symposium is a vital cog in the social machinery of Athens, a place where the elite flex their mental muscles over goblets of wine. Here, the rich and influential gather in private homes adorned with cushioned couches and ornate pottery, no IKEA flat packs in sight. But let's not forget the symposiarch, the evening's appointed maestro, whose job is to keep the wine flowing and the conversation lively. It's a role that requires the diplomatic finesse of a seasoned politician, ensuring that neither the wine nor the debates spill over into chaos. Now, onto the menu. Dinner at a symposium isn't your average Greek taverner affair. Expect delicacies like roasted lamb, honey cakes, and figs, luxuries that speak to the host's wealth. And while you're savoring these delights, remember that the real star of the evening isn't the food, it's the wine. The Greeks have a thing for mixing their wine with water, a custom that keeps the party going without the guests toppling over like dominoes. The ratio, roughly 3 parts water to 1 part wine, which might sound tame until you consider the sheer volume consumed over the course of the night. As the evening progresses, the conversation shifts from light banter to more serious topics. Politics, philosophy, and poetry all get their turn in the spotlight. Picture Socrates reclining on a couch, posing his infamous questions amidst the haze of conversation. His probing inquiries cut through the merriment, a reminder that even in leisure, the pursuit of truth is relentless. But let's not romanticize too much. Not every symposium is a Platonic dialogue in action. More often than not, the discussions veer into braggadocio and boastful tales, each guest striving to outdo the last with stories of valor or wit. And then there's the entertainment. No symposium is complete without music and performers. Flute girls, hired for their musical prowess, weave melodies into the atmosphere, while dancers and acrobats add a touch of spectacle. But beneath the allure lies a stark reality. These entertainers are often slaves or medics, their talents commodified for the pleasure of Athens' elite. It's a grim reminder of the social strata that underpin the city's glittering facade. As the night deepens, so does the wine's influence. What began as spirited debate can quickly devolve into drunken revelry. The symposium's aftermath is a blur of spilled wine and slurred speeches, the floor littered with discarded garlands. Hangovers, it seems, are as ancient as the symposium itself. Yet, beyond the haze of wine and rhetoric, the symposium holds a mirror to Athenian society. It's a microcosm of the city's culture, where the boundaries of thought are pushed even as societal norms are reinforced. The exclusivity of these gatherings underscores the chasm between rich and poor, citizen and slave, man and woman. It's a world where the privileged few dictate the course of conversation, and by extension, the course of the city. As the echoes of the symposium fade into the night, you're left to ponder the dualities of Athens. It's a place of soaring achievements and profound inequalities, of intellectual pursuits and earthly pleasures. The city stands at the crossroads of history, its legacy a tangled web of contradictions. Reflecting on your day in the life of an Athenian, it's clear that the city's legendary status is both well-deserved and deeply complex. Athens is a beacon of democracy, yet its foundation is built on exclusion. It's a cradle of philosophy, but its thinkers often wrestle with the limitations of their time. The Parthenon may gleam in the sunlight, but its stones are a testament to the sweat and toil of countless laborers. In the end, Athens is more than just its marble monuments or philosophical treatises. It's a vibrant testament to the human spirit's capacity for greatness and folly, a reminder that our modern struggles are echoes of ancient challenges. The city's story is a tapestry of triumphs and trials, its threads woven from the lives of those who dared to dream and those who bore the weight of those dreams. So, as the first light of dawn begins to brush the Acropolis, casting its timeless silhouette against the sky, you realize that the legacy of Athens isn't just in its grand achievements. It's in the resilience of its people, the ceaseless quest for knowledge and understanding. In the end, Athens teaches us that the journey toward enlightenment is as important as the destination, a journey that continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. Emperor Justinian, a name that rings bells of grandeur, ambition, and a splash of controversy. You could say he was the Elon Musk of his day, minus the tweets and electric cars. Instead, he had the Byzantine Empire to tinker with, which, let's face it, is no small sandbox to play in. This was the 6th century AD, folks, and the world was a chaotic mix of power struggles, economic headaches, and religious squabbles. Justinian saw all this and thought, you know what this empire needs? A makeover. And by makeover, I mean he wanted to restore the glory of the Roman Empire, complete with its sprawling territories and imposing architecture. Think of it as the ultimate fixer-upper project. But before we dive into his grand plans, let's rewind a bit. The early 6th century was a time when the Byzantine Empire was holding onto the remnants of Roman might like a fading rock star clutching a rusty guitar. The economy was a roller coaster, and not the fun kind. We're talking inflation, tax issues, and a coinage system that would make modern cryptocurrency look stable. Meanwhile, religious tensions were the order of the day, with doctrinal disputes causing more drama than a reality TV show reunion. Monophysitism, anyone. It was a divisive theological debate over the nature of Christ, which might sound dry, but trust me, it was the Twitter feud of its time. Enter Justinian, born around 482 AD in Tauresium, a small town in what is now North Macedonia. He wasn't born into royalty, but he had an uncle named Justin who became emperor in 518 AD. Talk about having a well-connected uncle. Justinian, who was as ambitious as they come, got himself adopted by his uncle and quickly climbed the ranks. By 527 AD, Justinian was co-emperor, and when Uncle Justin passed on, he took the solo throne. Imagine a combination of sheer determination, a knack for politics, and a pinch of luck. That's how Justinian made it to the top. Now, Justinian wasn't just a political animal, he also had a taste for romance. Enter Theodora, one of the most fascinating women of the ancient world. She was a former actress, which back then was about as scandalous as it gets. Her life story could fill a whole season of a gripping Netflix series. Despite her humble beginnings, Theodora was sharp, politically savvy, and a force to be reckoned with. Their marriage in 525 AD was a power coupling that would make today's celebrity pairs look like amateurs. Together, they were the ultimate Byzantine power duo, with Theodora playing a crucial role in Justinian's reign. With Theodora by his side, Justinian set his sights on reviving the Roman Empire's glory days. This wasn't just a vanity project, He genuinely believed that a unified Roman Empire was essential for political stability and religious harmony. Plus, who doesn't want to leave a legacy that outshines their predecessors? But let's not kid ourselves. This wasn't going to be a walk in the park. The Western Roman Empire had crumbled by 476 AD, leaving a patchwork of kingdoms in its wake. Justinian's dream involved taking these territories back, which was easier said than done. Before launching his military campaigns, Justinian had to deal with domestic issues. The economy needed a serious reboot. Tax reforms were introduced, but these were about as popular as a tax audit. Then there was the legal system. Justinian took on the Herculean task of codifying Roman law, resulting in the Corpus Juris Civilis, or Body of Civil Law, published in 529 AD. This was the legal equivalent of cleaning out your attic, dusting off ancient laws, discarding the outdated ones, and organizing them into a coherent system. It was a monumental endeavor that would influence European legal systems for centuries. Religion, too, was high on Justinian's agenda. He was a devout Christian and saw himself as the defender of orthodoxy, but his religious policies weren't exactly a hit with everyone. The Monophysite controversy was a particularly sticky issue, and Justinian's efforts to enforce Chalcedonian Christianity often led to unrest. Religious unity was a noble goal, but the reality was more complicated than a Byzantine mosaic. And let's talk about Theodora again, because she wasn't just window dressing. She was a formidable political player in her own right. During the Nika riots of 532 AD, when angry factions nearly toppled Justinian's rule, it was Theodora who famously advised against fleeing, saying, "Royalty is a fine burial shroud." Translation: better to die an emperor than live a coward. Her resolve helped Justinian crush the rebellion, proving that behind every great emperor is a powerhouse empress with nerves of steel. So here we have Justinian at the dawn of his reign, a man with a plan, a brilliant partner, and a vision to restore Rome's lost glory. But as with any grand ambition, the path was fraught with challenges, and the stakes were sky-high. The next steps involved military campaigns that would stretch the empire's resources to the limit and test Justinian's resolve to its core. But that's a tale for another day. For now, we've set the stage for a story of ambition, power, and the quest to turn back the clock on a fractured world. Justinian was a man with a plan and the audacity to match it. As if juggling an empire, a formidable wife, and a theological minefield wasn't enough, he decided to add military conquest to his to-do list. So, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of his military campaigns, starting with the reconquest of North Africa. Picture this. It's 533 AD, and Justinian has set his sights on the Vandal kingdom, which sounds like the name of a punk band, but was actually a thorn in the empire's side for nearly a century. The Vandals had been living it up in North Africa, enjoying the spoils of Carthage while snubbing their noses at Constantinople. Enter General Belisarius, Justinian's got a military mastermind who would make any chess grandmaster look like an amateur. This guy was the Michael Jordan of Byzantine generals, cool under pressure and sharp as attack. Belisarius was tasked with leading a relatively small force of about 15,000 men to take on the Vandals, who were no slouches themselves. Armed with a mix of cavalry, infantry, and some naval support, Belisarius sailed across the Mediterranean with the kind of confidence you'd expect from someone who knew he was about to make history. Now, let's talk logistics. Imagine coordinating an invasion with the precision of a Swiss watch, but in the 6th century. We're talking about moving troops, horses, weapons, and food across hundreds of miles of ocean. Not exactly a walk in the park when your navigational tools are slightly less reliable than your average GPS. The cost of this operation was staggering, drawing heavily on the empire's coffers. But Justinian was banking on a big win to justify the expense, an all-or-nothing bet that would make a Vegas high roller blush. Belisarius landed in North Africa, and in a series of swift and decisive battles, made short work of the Vandal forces. The Battle of Ad Decimum and the Battle of Tricamarum were blitzkrieg-like affairs that left the Vandals reeling and the Byzantines in control of Carthage within months. It was a victory that echoed through the halls of Constantinople, a testament to Belisarius's brilliance and Justinian's vision. But here's the kicker. The conquest of North Africa was just the appetizer. Justinian's ambitions were far from sated. Next on the menu was Italy, the erstwhile heart of the Roman Empire. The Ostrogoths, who were now running the show, were about to find themselves on the receiving end of Justinian's restoration project. This wasn't just about territory. It was about reclaiming the cultural and political center of the Roman world. Belisarius, fresh from his African triumph, was dispatched to Italy in 535 AD to kick things off. The campaign, however, would prove to be a different beast altogether. Italy was a logistical nightmare. The Gothic War dragged on for nearly 2 decades, an epic slog that tested the limits of Byzantine endurance and resources. We're talking sieges, guerrilla warfare, and the kind of attrition that would make a Roman legionnaire weep. The cost, astronomical. The empire poured money into this conflict like water into a sieve, with the treasury hemorrhaging silver at a rate that would give any modern accountant heart palpitations. Yet, despite the financial strain, Justinian was undeterred. He was in it for the long haul. Belisarius faced numerous challenges, not least of which was the political intrigue back in Constantinople. Court politics were a snake pit, and even a general as brilliant as Belisarius found himself entangled in its coils. His success made him a target for jealousy and suspicion, a common theme in the Byzantine soap opera. The emperor, wary of his general's growing popularity, recalled Belisarius more than once, leaving the campaign in the hands of less competent commanders. Imagine being the best player on the team, but constantly benched because the coach is insecure. Despite these setbacks, Belisarius scored a series of victories, including the capture of Rome in 536 AD. But holding onto the city was another matter entirely. The Ostrogoths, under King Totila, mounted a fierce resistance, and the war dragged on into a seemingly endless back and forth. By the time the Gothic War finally concluded in 554 AD, Italy was a shadow of its former self, ravaged, depopulated, and impoverished. The cost of success was high, both in terms of human life and economic resources. So, what's the takeaway here? Justinian's campaigns were like a high-stakes poker game where the emperor bet the empire's future on the turn of a card. The reconquest of North Africa was a relatively quick win, but Italy was a protracted grind that tested the limits of Byzantine endurance. The empire's coffers were significantly lighter, and while the territorial gains were impressive, it came at a tremendous cost. Justinian's ambition was both his greatest asset and his greatest liability, a double-edged sword that carved out a legacy, but also bled the empire dry. And yet, the allure of these conquests is undeniable. They were the stuff of legends, tales of glory and triumph that resonated through the ages. But behind the romantic veneer was the harsh reality of war, with all its blood, sweat, and tears. The Byzantine Empire was stretched to its limits, and the cracks were beginning to show. The stage was set for the next chapter in Justinian's saga, where the empire would face new challenges, and the emperor's resolve would be tested like never before. But that's a story for another day, as the empire's journey through history continues to unfold. And so, dear listeners, with the empire stretched like a poorly made toga and the treasury lighter than a feather, Justinian decided to shift gears, or rather, scrolls. It was time to swap military might for legal wizardry, rolling up his emperor's sleeves and diving headfirst into the arcane world of legal reform. Enter the Corpus Juris Civilis, the legal equivalent of a magnum opus, a grand compilation of Roman law that would make even the most seasoned lawyer's head spin. To understand why Justinian went law crazy, let's set the scene. The Byzantine Empire was a melting pot of cultures, religions, and languages, a place where diversity was both a strength and a bureaucratic nightmare. Imagine trying to run an empire where everyone plays by different sets of rules. It's like herding cats, but the cats have swords and opinions. The goal, a unified legal framework to bring order to chaos and remind everyone who's boss. Justinian's legal brainchild, published in 529 AD, was no small feat. It consisted of 4 parts, each with a mouthful of a name. The Codex Justinianus, the Institutes, the Digest, or Pandects, and the novels. Together, these works were the Avengers of law books, combining centuries of Roman legal thought into a single, coherent system. The idea was simple: distill the wisdom of the ages into a rulebook that could hold the empire together, like a legal duct tape for an empire with plenty of cracks. The Codex was essentially a greatest hits album of imperial edicts, while the Institute served as a textbook for budding lawyers, or as they were called back then, jurisprudence. The Digest was the real showstopper, a 50-volume colossus that compiled the opinions of Rome's finest legal minds, serving up a smorgasbord of case law with all the complexity of a Byzantine mosaic. Finally, the novels, or new laws, addressed more contemporary issues, like a legal blog, but with more gravitas and less clickbait. Now, you might be wondering, why should we care about a bunch of dusty old laws? Well, here's the kicker. The Corpus Juris Civilis laid the foundation for much of modern European legal systems. It's like the granddaddy of legal codes, influencing everything from the Napoleonic Code to modern civil law. Without it, you might be fighting legal battles with scrolls instead of statutes. So next time you're thankful for a coherent legal system, tip your hat to Justinian. But let's not get too carried away with the romance of legal reform. The reality on the ground was far from glamorous. Implementing these codifications across the empire was about as easy as getting cats to dance on cue. Bureaucrats were buried under mountains of papyrus, desperately trying to keep up with the emperor's ambitious agenda. The Byzantine bureaucracy was a beast, a labyrinthine network of officials, clerks, and scribes who made the DMV look efficient. The sheer scale of this overhaul was staggering. You had officials poring over ancient texts, extracting useful laws, and discarding the outdated ones. It was like a massive spring cleaning, but instead of dust bunnies, they dealt with laws about inheritance and property rights. And let's not forget the cultural mishmash that was the Byzantine Empire. Trying to enforce a single legal system across regions with wildly different customs was a Herculean task. And then there was the money. Oh, the money. Legal reform wasn't cheap, and the empire's coffers were already running on fumes thanks to Justinian's military adventures. Maintaining a sprawling legal system required resources, a never-ending stream of funds to keep the bureaucratic machine churning. It was a delicate balancing act, like walking a tightrope over a pit of financial ruin. Yet, Justinian was undeterred. He had a vision, and like any visionary, he was willing to pay the price. So what was the immediate payoff of all this legal tinkering? Well, in the short term, it was a bit of a mixed bag. Sure, there was a semblance of order, but enforcing these laws was another story. Local officials often turned a blind eye to the central edicts, interpreting laws through the lens of local customs. It was the Wild West of legal systems, with each region putting its own spin on the rules. Yet, despite these challenges, the long-term impact of Justinian's legal reforms cannot be overstated. They provided a framework that, over time, helped stabilize the empire, offering a sense of continuity amidst the chaos. It was like planting seeds for a tree that would bear fruit centuries later, a legacy that outlived the emperor himself. So, as we wrap up this chapter on Justinian's legal escapades, let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer audacity of his vision. He wasn't just an emperor with a penchant for conquest. He was a reformer with a knack for legal innovation. His work was a testament to the power of law to shape societies, a reminder that even in the most turbulent times, there's order to be found in the fine print. But don't get too comfortable yet. The Byzantine Empire still had its fair share of challenges ahead: religious unrest, economic woes, and the ever-present threat of invasion. The stage is set for more drama, intrigue, and maybe even the odd miracle or two. Stay tuned, because the saga of Justinian and his Byzantine playground is far from over. And speaking of miracles, let's talk about one of the most jaw-dropping feats of Justinian's reign: the construction of the Hagia Sophia. This wasn't just any old building. It was an architectural marvel, a symbol of Byzantine grandeur that would dominate the skyline of Constantinople and the imagination of the world for centuries. Think of it as the ancient world's answer to a skyscraper, a structure so ambitious it practically shouted, "Hey, Rome, we're still a big deal." Now, if you're imagining a serene project with birds chirping and worker bees humming along in harmony, think again. The building of the Hagia Sophia was anything but peaceful. This was a massive undertaking that began in 532 AD, right after the Nika riots, when Justinian decided it was time to show off the empire's resilience and power. He envisioned a basilica that would not only serve as a place of worship, but also as a testament to his reign, an eternal reminder of his legacy. What he wanted was clear: go big or go home. Enter Anthemius of Tralles and Isidore of Miletus, the architectural dream team hired by Justinian to bring his vision to life. Imagine them as the Frank Lloyd Wrights of their time, but with a penchant for domes and mosaics rather than prairie homes. These guys weren't just architects. They were the mad scientists of their craft, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with stone and mortar. The blueprint for the Hagia Sophia was revolutionary. Justinian wanted a dome so massive that it would seem to float on air, a feat that required ingenuity bordering on insanity. We're talking about a dome that measured a staggering 31 meters in diameter and soared 55 meters high, leaving onlookers with their jaws on the floor. It was like trying to balance a giant stone hat on a delicate set of columns. No easy task when your tools are a bit more rudimentary than CAD software. But let's dig into the economic nitty-gritty, because this grandeur came with a price tag that would make even a modern real estate developer gasp. The cost of the Hagia Sophia's construction was astronomical, drawing heavily on the empire's already strained resources. Some estimates suggest the project consumed about 320,000 pounds of gold, which, if you're doing the math, is enough to make Scrooge McDuck's money bin look like loose change. Justinian was investing in bricks and mortar as if it were his personal stock market. And then there was the labor force. The unsung heroes, or should I say, the coerced masses, who toiled day and night to make this dream a reality. Thousands of workers, many of them slaves or conscripted laborers, were drafted from across the empire. It was an all-hands-on-deck situation, with craftsmen, artisans, and laborers working under grueling conditions. Think of it as the original extreme home makeover, but with less glamour and more back-breaking work. The societal pressure was immense. The Hagia Sophia wasn't just a building, it was a statement, a declaration of Byzantine superiority in a world where prestige was as valuable as gold. The pressure to complete it was immense, and failure was not an option. Justinian needed this project to succeed not only for his legacy, but also to cement the empire's place on the world stage. It was a gamble, mixing ambition with equal parts stubbornness and audacity. Yet, despite the challenges, the Hagia Sophia was completed in a record time of about 5 years, opening its doors in 537 AD. The result was nothing short of spectacular, a shimmering masterpiece that seemed to defy gravity, adorned with intricate mosaics and marble pillars. The dome, with its ring of windows, created an ethereal play of light that made it appear as if suspended from heaven itself. It was a triumph of engineering and artistry, a testament to what human ingenuity could achieve when pushed to its limits. But let's not get swept up in the romance of it all. The reality behind the beauty was complex. The Hagia Sophia was a symbol of power, yes, but also a reminder of the empire's relentless ambition and the human cost that ambition demanded. It stood as a beacon of faith, yet its construction was steeped in political machinations and economic strain. The romantic narrative of a divine edifice belied the harsh realities faced by those who built it. And here's a plot twist for you. The original dome collapsed in 558 AD, less than 2 decades after completion, due to an earthquake. Talk about a cosmic joke. The rebuilding efforts were monumental in themselves, with Isidore the Younger, the nephew of the original architect, stepping in to redesign and fortify the structure. The new dome was even taller, reaching 56 meters, because if you're going to rebuild, you might as well go even bigger. The Hagia Sophia's legacy is undeniable. It remained the world's largest cathedral for nearly 1,000 years, a testament to Justinian's vision and the empire's enduring influence. But it also stands as a reminder of the human toil and the societal pressures that fueled such grand endeavors. The allure of the Hagia Sophia lies not just in its beauty, but in the complex tapestry of ambition, power, and sacrifice woven into its very walls. So, as we wrap up this chapter on Justinian's architectural triumphs, let's remember that behind every great achievement is a story of struggle and perseverance. The Hagia Sophia is more than just a building. It is a symbol, a legacy, and a cautionary tale of ambition's double-edged sword. But the Byzantine Empire's story doesn't end here. Oh no, there's plenty more drama on the horizon. Stay tuned, because Justinian's reign was just warming up, and the saga of Byzantine splendor continues to unfold. And speaking of warming up, Justinian's ambitions didn't just simmer, they boiled over. Picture the Byzantine Empire like a juggler in a circus act, only this juggler was trying to balance flaming torches, a chainsaw, and a live chicken, all while riding a unicycle. It was an impressive sight, but one wrong move, and everything would come crashing down. Well, spoiler alert, Justinian's reign eventually became that wrong move. You see, Justinian's ambitions were like a buffet where he piled his plate too high, and pretty soon, the empire found itself with a serious case of indigestion. Let's talk numbers, because that's where the reality check kicks in. A reality that involves the kind of economic exhaustion that makes a marathon look like a walk in the park. By the time Justinian was done with his grand projects, the Byzantine coffers were emptier than a Monday morning coffee pot. The wars in Italy alone, part of his grand reconquest dreams, had drained the treasury faster than you can say financial crisis. The Gothic War, which dragged on for nearly 2 decades, had cost the empire an estimated 4 million solidi, a sum that could fund a small kingdom or two. Then there were the natural disasters, because apparently Mother Nature decided to join the party. The plague of Justinian, hitting in 541 AD, was like an uninvited guest that brought its own chaos. Imagine a pandemic sweeping through an already stretched empire, wiping out up to 25 million people. It was like a grim game of musical chairs where the music stopped and half the players vanished. The workforce crumbled, agriculture took a nosedive, and tax revenues dried up faster than a summer puddle. As if that weren't enough, the empire was also overextended, like an octopus trying to juggle with too few arms. The vast territories Justinian had clawed back were a logistical nightmare to govern. From the edges of North Africa to the Italian peninsula, keeping these lands in line was like herding a colony of feral cats. The cost of defending these far-flung frontiers was astronomical, with garrisons stretched thinner than a hipster's wallet. And let's not forget the religious and social tensions simmering beneath the surface. Justinian's attempts to enforce religious unity were as successful as forcing a cat to take a bath. The monophysite controversy, the theological equivalent of a never-ending Twitter feud, was still causing headaches. His policies often left as many people disgruntled as they did pacified. The empire was a pressure cooker of cultural and religious diversity, and Justinian's one-size-fits-all approach didn't always fit. So, what about Justinian's legacy? Here's where things get interesting. On the one hand, he was a visionary, a reformer who left a mark deeper than a media crater. His legal reforms, the Corpus Juris Civilis, were revolutionary, shaping the legal landscape for centuries. On the architectural front, the Hagia Sophia was a marvel that still stands today, a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. But and there's always a but, these accomplishments came at a cost. The myth of Justinian as a benevolent ruler is just that, a myth. The reality was a complex mix of ambition and overreach, a ruler whose grand designs often ignored the practicalities of governance. Justinian was like a kid in a candy store, grabbing at everything shiny without considering the sugar crash that would follow. His reign left the Byzantine Empire economically exhausted and politically overstretched, sowing the seeds for future instability. And now, a reflection on human nature. The allure of grand projects is undeniable, but they often come with hidden costs. Justinian's story is a cautionary tale of ambition's dual nature, a reminder that the pursuit of greatness can also lead to downfall. It's the stuff of legends, sure, but behind every legend is a reality check waiting to happen. In the grand tapestry of history, Justinian's reign is a vivid thread, both glorious and cautionary. It speaks to the enduring human drive to achieve greatness, often at the expense of stability. His empire, like a candle burning at both ends, shone brightly but burned out quickly, leaving future emperors to pick up the pieces. The Byzantine Empire would continue to evolve, its story far from over, but Justinian's chapter remains a poignant lesson in the pursuit of ambition and the high stakes of imperial dreams. So, as the curtain falls on Justinian's saga, we're left with a tapestry of triumphs and trials, a legacy as complex as the man himself. Somewhere between the inception of democracy and the invention of gyros, the ancient Greeks decided to throw a party, a really big one, where the main attraction wasn't the food but the athletes. Picture this, 776 BC, Olympia, Greece. It's hot, dusty, and the sound of sandals shuffling on dirt fills the air. This is where the first Olympic Games kicked off, transforming a sleepy sanctuary into a bustling hub of competition, religion, and more than a little bit of ancient swagger. Now, why did the Greeks decide to start this whole Olympic shindig? Was it for the love of sport, or maybe to sell Zeus-themed merchandise? Not quite. The games were rooted in both political and religious motivations. They were part festival, part political summit, and part religious pilgrimage. The Greeks held these games every 4 years, known as an Olympiad, and they were dedicated to Zeus, the big guy in the sky who ran the show on Mount Olympus. The idea was to honor him with athletic prowess, hoping he'd bless their crops or not chuck a lightning bolt their way. The political angle was just as crucial. Back in those days, Greece wasn't a single united country, but a collection of city-states, each with its own personality and penchant for rivalry. Think of them as a group of siblings who got along just enough to live under the same roof, but were always looking for an opportunity to outshine each other. By the time the first games rolled around, these city-states saw the Olympics as the perfect platform to showcase their strength and unity, or at least pretend they liked each other for a few weeks. The infrastructure to host such an event was no small feat. Building an Olympic site in ancient Greece wasn't just about slapping together a few stadiums. Olympia became a mini metropolis with everything from a stadium that could hold 40,000 spectators to temples that made sure the gods felt properly worshipped. The logistics were mind-boggling for the time, especially when you consider that the average Greek city-state was more interested in waging war than organizing foot races. Speaking of which, let's talk about how those rivalries played out. The city-states were always in competition, whether on the battlefield or in the stadium. The Olympic Games became a way for them to channel their rivalry into something less bloody, though no less aggressive. Athletes from different regions would come to compete, and the stakes were high. Winning an Olympic event brought immense honor not just to the athlete, but also to their home city-state. It was like the ancient version of nationalistic bragging rights, without the Twitter wars. But don't let the romantic notion of noble athletes and divine favor fool you. The reality was a bit grittier. Athletes trained in brutal conditions, often with the kind of single-minded intensity that would make a modern-day triathlete look like a couch potato. They competed naked, by the way, which supposedly allowed for greater freedom of movement, but also because it showed off the human form in its peak condition. An early form of branding, you might say. The games themselves were a mix of events that ranged from the familiar, like running and wrestling, to the more exotic, like chariot racing. The pentathlon was a crowd favorite, combining running, jumping, discus, javelin, and wrestling into one grueling event. The winners didn't get a medal or a trophy, but a simple olive wreath. For the athletes, this was the ultimate badge of honor. For everyone else, it was a reminder of the ephemeral nature of glory, much like when you win a plastic trophy at your local bowling alley. These games also served as a rare opportunity for peace. During the Olympic truce, a period of military ceasefire, athletes and spectators could travel safely to and from Olympia. This was less about goodwill and more about ensuring that the games went off without a hitch. After all, it's hard to focus on a foot race if you're worried about dodging arrows. Despite all the pomp and circumstance, the Olympics were not without their darker side. Cheating was surprisingly common, with athletes resorting to bribery, sabotage, and whatever else they could get away with to secure a win. It seems the ancient Greeks were just as competitive, if not more so, than today's athletes, with fewer regulations to keep them in check. So, there you have it. The first Olympic Games were a mix of religion, politics, and competition, held together by the tenuous threads of city-state rivalries and the whims of the gods. It was a spectacle of human ambition, both noble and flawed, that set the stage for centuries of athletic tradition. The next time you watch the Olympics, just remember, it all started here, with a bunch of Greeks running around in the buff, hoping to catch Zeus's eye. And speaking of catching Zeus's eye, let's zero in on the centerpiece of those early games, the Stadion race. This wasn't just any ordinary foot race. It was the original, singular event when the Olympics debuted in 776 B.C. Imagine a straight dash of roughly 192 meters, or about the length of 2 football fields. It was the only event for the first 13 Olympic Games, leaving little room for the multitasking athletes we idolize today. But simplicity didn't mean lack of drama. Far from it. This was a no-holds-barred sprint, where athletes raced not just for glory, but for a chance to cement their name in history. Enter Corobus of Elis, the first recorded Olympic champion. Legend has it that Corobus, a humble cook by trade, stormed to victory in the inaugural Stadian race. It's a tale that suggests anyone could rise from obscurity to greatness, like a Rocky Balboa of antiquity. But let's not get too misty-eyed. The reality was likely less about underdog triumphs and more about intense local rivalries. Elis, Corobus's hometown, was just a stone's throw from Olympia, giving him a distinct home field advantage. Still, his victory was so celebrated that it secured him a spot in the annals of history, proving that even back then, people loved a good hometown hero story. Now, you might wonder how these ancient runners prepared for such a grueling event. While today's athletes have access to protein shakes, personal trainers, and high-tech gear, the Greeks had a more, shall we say, rustic approach. Training regimens were intense, often involving hours of running, wrestling, and exercises to build endurance and strength. Think of it as cross-fit with a side of sand and sunburn. Diets were equally straightforward, with a heavy reliance on barley bread, cheese, figs, and olives, foods that were plentiful and practical, if not particularly exciting. Meat was a luxury, often reserved for post-victory feasts rather than daily consumption. It was a high-carb, low-cost lifestyle, optimized for performance, not pleasure. And while we're stripping away the romantic veneer, let's address the athletes themselves. We've all heard tales of these demigods in human form, but the truth is, they were a mixed bag. Some hailed from wealthy families and could afford to support their sporting pursuits, while others were more like mercenaries, competing for fame and fortune. There were no national teams or sponsorship deals, just individuals, sometimes with the financial backing of their city-states, vying for that coveted olive wreath. It was an era where personal glory outweighed team spirit, and the stakes were as high as they come. But what did winning actually mean besides a leafy crown? It wasn't just about personal pride. Victors were showered with gifts, privileges, and lifelong prestige. In some cases, they were even immortalized in statues or honored with free meals for life, the ancient equivalent of a lifetime supply of your favorite snack. Cities would often reward their champions with tax breaks, front-row theater seats, and a hero's welcome that would make today's ticker-tape parades look like small-town gatherings. These incentives weren't just for show. They were rooted in the economic and political benefits that a victorious athlete could bring to their home city-state, boosting its reputation and influence across the Greek world. However, the road to victory was paved with more than just sweat and determination. Cheating and scandal were as much a part of the ancient Olympics as they are today, perhaps even more so, given the lack of formal oversight. Athletes might resort to bribery, sabotage, or even more creative means to secure a win. The stakes were high, and the moral boundaries were, let's say, flexible. It wasn't uncommon for athletes to hire trainers who were more akin to modern-day fixers, ensuring that their protege had every possible advantage, fair or otherwise. So, while we often look back on the ancient Olympics with a sort of nostalgic reverence, it's crucial to remember that they were a reflection of their time, an era of ambition, rivalry, a fair bit of skullduggery. The athletes might have been competing in the buff, but the politics and machinations behind the scenes were anything but transparent. The Olympics were a stage where the best and worst of human nature played out, a tradition that, let's face it, hasn't changed much over the millennia. As we wrap up this slice of Olympic history, it's clear that behind the romantic legends and celebrated victors lie stories of grit, cunning, and human ambition. The first game set the stage for a legacy that would evolve and endure, a testament to the dual nature of humanity, our desire to achieve greatness, and the lengths we'll go to get there. So, as we look forward to the next part of our journey through the history of the Olympics, remember, every champion was once just a competitor, every legend a mere mortal racing through the dust of Olympia. Now, let's take a closer look at what happened when the dust of the stadium settled and the champions returned home, olive wreaths in tow. Winning an Olympic event was like hitting the jackpot in ancient Greece, with both tangible and intangible rewards that would make even the most stoic philosopher crack a smile. Sure, the glory of sporting achievement was a nice touch, but the real perks were in the spoils. For starters, the victors didn't just get a leafy crown, they became celebrities of their city-states. Imagine coming home to a hero's welcome where the entire town turns up to celebrate your victory. We're talking parades, feasts, and sometimes even songs composed in your honor, ancient Greece's version of a Grammy award. But the adoration didn't stop at applause and accolades. It extended to real economic incentives. Some cities, like Athens, offered their victorious athletes free meals for life, a dinner tab that could rival a modern-day buffet pass. And who doesn't love the idea of a lifetime of free gyros? But hold on to your laurel crowns, because the benefits didn't end there. Some victors received financial rewards equivalent to a small fortune. Take the Spartan athlete who might have been gifted with exemption from military service, a significant perk given Sparta's fondness for all things martial. Now, that's an incentive that would make anyone sprint a little faster. On a larger scale, these individual achievements had ripple effects across their hometowns. A victorious athlete brought glory, and dare I say, a bit of swagger to their city-state. It was like winning a major international award today, the kind of thing that boosts civic pride and puts your hometown on the map, figuratively speaking. In a world where city-states were locked in perpetual rivalry, an Olympic victory was a potent symbol of superiority and could elevate a city's status in the eyes of its neighbors. It wasn't just about the athlete, it was about the collective ego of an entire populace. But let's not romanticize this too much. Behind the olive wreaths and cheers lay a more pragmatic motivation: economics. The Olympic Games were a major economic event that brought a significant influx of visitors to Olympia, sparking a miniature economic boom every 4 years. Picture thousands of spectators, athletes, and traders descending upon this rural locale, all needing food, lodging, and entertainment. Local economies thrived, with inns, taverns, and markets buzzing with activity. And let's not forget the ancient equivalent of modern-day sponsorships. City-states saw the prestige of supporting successful athletes, offering them training facilities, financial backing, and even political leverage. It was a savvy investment, akin to a corporation sponsoring a top athlete today. The city-state that backed the winning horse, or runner in this case, reaped the benefits of reflected glory and increased influence. These sponsorships were not purely altruistic. They were strategic moves in the game of city-state politics, where allegiances were as fluid as an Olympic sprinter. A wealthy patron might offer to cover an athlete's training costs, hoping to curry favor or gain a political edge. It was part philanthropy, part political maneuvering, and all about enhancing one's status in the cutthroat world of Greek diplomacy. But why did winning matter so much, beyond the immediate rewards? It was about legacy, both personal and civic. Victors were immortalized in poems and statues, their achievements recorded for posterity on stone tablets, a kind of ancient Instagram post that never expired. Well, unless someone decided to repurpose the stone. This eternal fame was intoxicating, a chance to be remembered long after one's muscles had turned to dust. Yet, for all its glory, the path to victory wasn't paved with gold. It was often a brutal, costly affair, requiring financial support and resources that not everyone could muster. While we love the idea of the underdog rising to the top, the truth is, many athletes came from privileged backgrounds, with the means to dedicate themselves entirely to training. It's like the Olympic equivalent of having a trust fund, allowing you to focus on your sport without worrying about mundane concerns like food and shelter. And what about those who didn't win? Well, let's just say ancient Greece didn't exactly hand out participation trophies. For most competitors, the games were a gamble with high stakes. The rewards of victory were immense, but the cost of failure could be just as significant. Athletes might return home with nothing to show for their efforts, and in a society that prized success so highly, the sting of defeat was keenly felt. So, while the Olympic Games were a dazzling display of athletic prowess and civic pride, they were also a reflection of the broader social and economic realities of ancient Greek life. The athletes were not just competing for personal glory, but for the honor and prestige of their city-states in a complex dance of ambition, rivalry, and economic interests. The games were a stage where the best and worst of human nature were put on display, a tradition that, like a well-worn pair of sandals, has stood the test of time. As we continue to explore the legacy of these ancient games, remember that behind every olive wreath was a story of ambition and aspiration, of cities vying for prestige and athletes striving for immortality. The Olympic Games were more than just a sporting event. They were a microcosm of the human condition, a testament to our enduring desire to achieve greatness, and the lengths we'll go to get there. So, speaking of the complex dance of ambition and aspiration, let's swivel our spotlight to one of the most enduring myths surrounding the ancient Olympic Games, the Olympic truce. Ah, the truce, a noble concept where all hostilities supposedly took a backseat for the sake of sport and camaraderie. It sounds like the kind of fairy tale you'd expect from an idealistic bedtime story, doesn't it? But as you might guess, the reality was far less idyllic and a lot more, shall we say, transactional. Let's start with the basics. The Olympic truce, or ekcheria, was an agreement that aimed to suspend hostilities and allow safe passage for athletes, spectators, and officials traveling to Olympia. The idea was that for a few weeks every 4 years, Greeks would lay down their weapons and pick up their running sandals. In theory, this truce was a shining example of peace and unity. In practice, it was more like a cleverly orchestrated PR stunt wrapped in a toga of diplomacy. First, let's bust the myth that the truce meant a complete cessation of all wars across Greece. Wishful thinking, my friend. The truth is, the truce primarily affected the region surrounding Olympia and the routes leading to it. It wasn't a blanket peace across the Greek world, but a strategic pause in specific areas to ensure the games could proceed without a hitch. Imagine a do not disturb sign hung over the Peloponnese, while the rest of Greece continued its regularly scheduled program of skirmishes and squabbles. The truce's real genius lay in its economic and political benefits. For the city-state of Elise, the primary overseer of the games, this agreement was a masterstroke of diplomacy. Elise got to play the role of the benevolent host, ensuring Olympia remained a neutral ground where the business of the games and the commerce that accompanied it could flourish. This wasn't just about avoiding bloodshed. It was about ensuring the crowds kept coming and spending, like an ancient version of boosting tourism. Moreover, while it's tempting to romanticize the idea of warriors laying down their arms for the love of sport, the truce was also about power dynamics and alliances. City-states used the games as an opportunity to flex their diplomatic muscles, forge alliances, and sometimes even plot future conflicts. It was a bit like a global summit today, where leaders smile for the cameras while their aides trade barbs and negotiate behind the scenes. And let's not overlook the political maneuvering that went hand in hand with the truce. The city-state that controlled the games wielded significant influence, not just in the athletic arena, but in the broader geopolitical landscape. Elise, with its oversight of the Olympics, was in a prime position to curry favor and broker deals. The games were a stage, and every athlete, official, and spectator was a player in a much larger drama. The truce also served as a handy tool for propaganda. By promoting peace and unity, city-states could polish their reputations and strengthen their diplomatic ties. It was a classic case of image management, ancient Greek style. The truce allowed city-states to project an image of civility and cooperation, even as they sharpened their swords and plotted their next moves. But let's not get too cynical. While the truce wasn't a panacea for war, it was a rare moment of respite amidst the chaos of ancient Greek life. For athletes and spectators, it meant a temporary reprieve from the constant threat of conflict, a chance to witness human achievement in its purest form. The games were a celebration of what could be achieved when people came together, however briefly, for a common purpose. So, while the Olympic truce might have been more about strategy than sentiment, it still offered a glimpse of peace in a world that was often anything but peaceful. It was a reminder that even in the midst of rivalry and ambition, there was room for something greater, a shared moment of humanity that transcended the battlefield. In the end, the truce was as much a product of its time as the games themselves, a complex blend of idealism and realism that reflected the dual nature of ancient Greek society. It was a testament to the power of sport to unite, even as it highlighted the intricate dance of politics and power that underpinned every aspect of the Olympics. As we unravel the layers of this ancient spectacle, it's clear that the games were more than just a series of athletic contests. They were a reflection of the very essence of what it meant to be human, with all its contradictions and complexities. And with that, we're poised to dive further into the web of intrigue and ambition that surrounded the ancient Olympic Games. In our next exploration, we'll peel back even more layers of this fascinating tapestry, revealing the human stories and historical forces that shaped one of the world's most enduring traditions. Stay tuned, because the tale of the Olympics is far from over, and there's plenty more to uncover. As we peel back even more of the layers surrounding the ancient Olympic Games, it's time to fast forward through a couple of millennia to see just how these dusty, naked races in Olympia managed to evolve into the global spectacle we know today. If you think the ancient Olympics were just a quaint festival for a bunch of toga-clad athletes, think again. Their legacy is as complex and enduring as the Greek myths themselves. First off, let's talk about the lasting athletic traditions. The ancient Olympics laid the groundwork for the very concept of organized sports events. Sure, the original games were a bit more brutal. Think fewer referees and more opportunities for a sneaky elbow to the ribs. But they planted the seeds for structured competition. The Greeks weren't just running around for fun. They were codifying rules, creating a sense of order that would be emulated for centuries. Fast forward to today, and you'll find that same spirit alive in everything from the regimented training schedules of Olympians to the standardized formats of modern sporting events. But it's not just about the rules and races. The ancient Olympics also set the stage for the fusion of sport and spectacle. The Games were a massive social event, drawing crowds from across the Greek world. This early mix of athletic prowess and theatrical flair has evolved into the dazzling opening ceremonies and commercialized fanfare of today's Olympics. If you've ever marveled at the pyrotechnics, the parade of nations, or the dramatic lighting of the Olympic flame, thank the Greeks for kicking off the tradition of turning sports into must-see TV. And speaking of TV, let's not forget the economics. While the ancient games were ostensibly about honoring Zeus, they were also a boon for the local economy. Olympia swelled with visitors. Much like host cities today brace themselves for an influx of global tourists, media, and of course, the almighty dollar. The Olympics have always been as much about the business of sport as the sport itself, a legacy that remains robust as cities vie for the chance to host, hoping for an economic windfall that might just justify the eye-watering budget. Now, onto the myths. The ancient Olympics were steeped in them, and they persist today. The idea of the Olympics as a pure, untainted celebration of human achievement is as much a myth now as it was then. In reality, both ancient and modern games have seen their fair share of scandal. From doping allegations to political boycotts, the Olympics have always been wrapped in the messy complexities of real life. The ancient Greeks had their own version of this, with bribery and cheating as common as olives and feta. Yet, just as then, the myth of the noble Olympic athlete endures, capturing our imagination and inspiring countless to chase that elusive glory. And what would the ancient Greeks think of today's Olympics? For starters, they'd probably be flabbergasted by the sheer scale of it all. The idea of a global event involving over 200 countries would have seemed as far-fetched as Icarus' ill-fated flight. But on a deeper level, they might find something familiar in the way the games bring people together, however briefly. The ancient Olympics were a rare opportunity for unity amid division, a chance for diplomacy to take the stage alongside athleticism. That spirit persists, even if it's often overshadowed by commercial interests and geopolitical tensions. The blend of myth and reality continues to define the Olympic narrative. We love the story of the underdog, the triumph over adversity, the unifying power of sport. Yet, we also know that behind every medal is a story of sacrifice, strategy, and sometimes less than noble tactics. The legacy of the ancient Olympics is this duality, the romance of athletic heroism tempered by the gritty reality of human ambition. In the grand tapestry of history, the ancient Olympics were a vibrant thread that wove together competition, culture, and commerce, were a reflection of human nature, with all its contradictions and complexities. As we look to the future of the Olympics, it's clear that this legacy is far from finished. The Games will continue to evolve, shaped by the same forces that drove their ancient predecessors: ambition, rivalry, and the eternal quest for greatness. So next time you watch the Olympics, whether you're marveling at a sprinter's record-breaking dash or pondering the political undertones of a medal ceremony, remember the dusty fields of Olympia. Remember the athletes who ran naked for glory and the city-states that jockeyed for prestige. The story of the Olympics is as much about our past as it is about our future, a testament to the enduring power of sport to capture the human spirit in all its flawed, fascinating glory. In the smoky haze following Alexander the Great's untimely exit from the world stage in 323 BCE, imagine a room packed with jostling generals and politicians, each eyeing the others like wolves around a wounded deer. Greece, Egypt, Persia, their tumultuous histories now entwined in a new, chaotic dance. But let's zero in on Egypt, the ancient land of pharaohs and pyramids, suddenly up for grabs. Why was everyone so eager to sink their greedy teeth into this sun-drenched territory? Well, if you had to pick a crown jewel, Egypt would be it. With the Nile turning its soil into a veritable Garden of Eden, and its strategic position as the Mediterranean's gateway to Africa and the Near East, it was a prize worth every imaginable backstab. Enter Ptolemy I, a man who knew how to play this game of thrones with the best of them. Originally just one of Alexander's many generals, Ptolemy was the guy who'd always find a way to land on his feet, no matter how many times the political landscape shifted beneath him. He wasn't just a military man, though. He had the brains to match his brawn. While other generals were busy squabbling for control over the sprawling territories Alexander had conquered, Ptolemy set his sights on Egypt. He saw potential where others saw merely sand and sunburn. Now, let's break down Ptolemy's masterstroke. While the rest of the Macedonian army was busy divvying up the spoils of war, Ptolemy made a beeline for Egypt. He was appointed satrap, the fancy word for governor, by Perdiccas, who was Alexander's regent and pretty much the de facto leader of what was left of the empire. But Ptolemy wasn't content to be anyone's underling for long. He had a plan, a really clever one. In 321 BCE, just 2 years after Alexander's death, Ptolemy made his move. He hijacked Alexander's body as it was being transported for burial. That's right, he literally kidnapped a corpse. Why? Because possessing the body of one of history's greatest conquerors was like holding a holy relic. It was a power play, a big neon sign flashing, "I am the rightful heir." This move was more than just morbid. It was genius. It gave him legitimacy in the eyes of the people and the troops, who still revered Alexander. Ptolemy wasn't just resting on his laurels, though. He knew Egypt's value wasn't just in its fertile lands, but in its potential as a cultural and economic powerhouse. He put down roots, quite literally, by investing in the infrastructure, building canals and fortifying cities. He established Alexandria, a city that would become one of the ancient world's most famous metropolises. If you're thinking, oh, just another city, think again. Alexandria was the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, a hub of knowledge and trade. Economically, Egypt was in a league of its own. Its grain supply could feed armies and fill coffers, making Ptolemy's new domain a breadbasket that every power in the Mediterranean had its eyes on. Ptolemy wasn't just a military strategist. He was a savvy economist. He understood that controlling the grain meant controlling power. And let's not forget the treasures of antiquity. Papyrus, linen, and those exotic spices that spiced up more than just food. They spiced up the entire trade economy. Politically, Ptolemy was as slippery as an eel in olive oil, while others were embroiled in costly wars over territories that were more trouble than they were worth. Ptolemy honed his diplomacy. He made alliances, broke them when necessary, and built a network of influence that stretched from the Aegean Sea to the deserts of Arabia. He was the ancient equivalent of a chess grandmaster, always thinking several moves ahead. You might wonder, what about the Egyptians themselves? How did they feel about this Macedonian interloper? Surprisingly, Ptolemy won them over. He adopted the title of pharaoh, blending Hellenistic and Egyptian traditions in a way that made him palatable to both the Greek elite and the native population. He was careful not to upset the religious order, understanding that in Egypt, the pharaoh was more than a king. He was a god. By respecting their customs and guards, Ptolemy secured his rule not just through force, but through legitimacy. And so, the stage was set for the Ptolemaic dynasty, one that would endure for nearly 300 years. Ptolemy's Egypt wasn't just a footnote in the annals of history. It was a pivotal player in the Mediterranean world. The dynasty he founded would see the likes of Cleopatra Roman VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, whose own dramatic story would captivate generations. But all this grandeur and spectacle began with one man's audacious gamble in a time of chaos, a gamble that turned the sands of Egypt into a thriving kingdom. In the end, Ptolemy didn't just seize a piece of Alexander's fractured empire. He built a legacy that would outlast them all. But let's hit pause on the melodrama of Ptolemy's rise and zoom in on what really kept Egypt ticking during his reign: the economy. Picture the Nile River not as a lazy blue ribbon winding through the desert, but as an ancient superhighway and ATM rolled into one. Forget silicon chips. The Nile's annual inundation was the real tech revolution. It transformed arid lands into lush fields, practically begging to be farmed. This was no small backyard garden either. It was a vast breadbasket that could feed the Mediterranean's insatiable appetite for grain. In a world where hungry armies conquered and empires crumbled, this was Egypt's trump card. Economically, the Ptolemaic dynasty was playing a different game altogether. They mastered the art of taxation, and not in a slapdash, let's see what sticks kind of way. This was a finely tuned machine, a precursor to the IRS that would make even the most seasoned modern bureaucrat do a double take. Taxes were levied on everything from land to livestock. And let's not forget the head tax, because why shouldn't you pay for the privilege of existing? The Ptolemies had a knack for squeezing every last drachma out of the populace, ensuring the state's coffers were as plump as a Nile-fed harvest. Now, let's talk agricultural innovations, because the Ptolemies weren't just sitting around waiting for the Nile to do its annual magic trick. They invested heavily in infrastructure, creating an intricate network of canals and dikes that made the land even more fertile. This wasn't just a boost to the local economy, it was a full-blown agricultural revolution. Imagine the ancient equivalent of precision farming, where every drop of water was put to good use. The result: crop yields that could make even the most industrious Roman farmer green with envy. And then there was Alexandria, the crown jewel of Ptolemaic Egypt, a city that wasn't just a place but an idea. Founded by Alexander the Great and nurtured by Ptolemy, it was a melting pot of cultures, ideas and trade. Think of it as the Wall Street and Silicon Valley of the ancient world combined. Merchants from as far as India and Arabia flocked to its bustling ports, their ships laden with exotic goods that would set any ancient shopaholic's heart racing. Spices, silk, precious stones. This was the stuff of legends and luxury, the kind of trade that could make or break empires. But let's not romanticize Alexandria too much. Behind the bustling markets and academic debates was a bureaucracy so complex it could make Kafka's nightmares look like a pleasant daydream. The Ptolemaic administration was a labyrinthine affair, with officials responsible for everything from tax collection to grain storage. It was the kind of red tape that would make a modern DMV look like a model of efficiency. The Greeks, Egyptians, and Jews who made up Alexandria's diverse populace had to navigate this bureaucratic jungle daily, a testament to the sheer willpower of people trying to get anything done in ancient Egypt. Despite the headaches, it was this very bureaucracy that kept the wheels of the economy turning. The Ptolemaic state was a well-oiled machine, even if it occasionally ground its citizens under its gears. Every grain of wheat, every bolt of linen, every piece of papyrus was meticulously accounted for, taxed, and traded. This wasn't just about keeping the lights on. It was about maintaining Egypt's status as the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. And let's be clear, this was a role the Ptolemies relished. In a world where power often boiled down to who could feed the most mouths, Egypt held all the cards. The economy wasn't just about survival. It was about dominance. By controlling the grain supply, the Ptolemies wielded influence over their neighbors like a seasoned poker player with a royal flush. The Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, everyone wanted a piece of Egypt's agricultural bounty, and they were willing to pay top drachma for it. The Ptolemies knew this and played their hand with the kind of cunning that would make Machiavelli nod in approval. But let's not forget the human side of this economic juggernaut. While the Ptolemies were busy counting their silver, the average Egyptian was hard at work in the fields, toiling under the relentless sun. It was their labor that turned the Nile's fertile banks into a land of plenty, their sweat that kept the granaries full. Yet, for all their efforts, they saw precious little of the wealth their work generated. Instead, they paid taxes, prayed for good floods, and hoped the bureaucratic machine wouldn't grind them down entirely. So, as we marvel at the economic prowess of Ptolemaic Egypt, let's remember that it was built on the backs of those who farmed its fields, sailed its ships, and navigated its complex bureaucracy. The Ptolemies may have played their cards well, but it was the ordinary people who kept the game going. And in a world where the Nile was more than just a river, but the lifeblood of an empire, that was no small feat. While the Egyptian masses toiled under the relentless sun, Alexandria was busy writing its own chapter in the grand story of Ptolemaic Egypt, a chapter filled with knowledge, culture, and a fair share of intrigue. This wasn't your average ancient city. Oh no, Alexandria was the brainchild of Alexander the Great himself, and if you've been paying attention, you know that guy didn't do anything by halves. Nestled on Egypt's Mediterranean coast was a bustling hub where the world came to trade goods and ideas, a vibrant melting pot where cultures collided with fireworks rather than fizzle. Now, let's talk about the Library of Alexandria. Cue the dramatic music. This was the academic rock star of the ancient world. Founded by Ptolemy I, or maybe his son, Ptolemy Roman II. History gets a little fuzzy on the details. This wasn't just a building filled with scrolls. It was the intellectual equivalent of the internet, a place that aimed to house every piece of written knowledge available. Picture scholars from Greece, Persia, India, and beyond, all huddled in its halls, debating everything from philosophy to mathematics. The library boasted an estimated 400,000 scrolls at its peak. That's a lot of papyrus, folks, a testament to the Ptolemies' commitment to knowledge as power. Of course, a library that massive didn't just happen. It was the culmination of a relentless pursuit of literature. The Ptolemies weren't above a little literary piracy either. Ships docking at Alexandria's port were often invited to share any scrolls on board, which were then meticulously copied. The originals, well, let's just say they often ended up staying in the library's collection. It was the ancient version of Napster, only with scrolls and a bit more state-sanctioned. Yet, for all its grandeur, the Library of Alexandria has gone down in history for its fiery demise, a cataclysmic event that scattered centuries of knowledge to the winds. While the popular myth paints this as a single, catastrophic blaze, the truth is more nuanced. The library likely suffered a series of unfortunate events over time, with Julius Caesar's inadvertent torching of the dockyards in 48 BCE being just one chapter in a longer tale of decline and destruction. Library's end wasn't a sudden book-burning party. It was more like a slow, tragic fade to black. But Alexandria was more than just its legendary library. It was a place where Greek and Egyptian cultures met and mingled, creating a unique fusion that was the envy of the ancient world. The Ptolemies were masters of this cultural blend, commissioning art that combined Greek realism with Egyptian symbolism. Their temples, like the Grand Serapeum, embodied this synthesis, dedicated to Serapis, a deity who was a little bit Greek, a little bit Egyptian, and entirely a Ptolemaic invention. This cultural cocktail extended to religion, too. The Ptolemies cleverly aligned themselves with Egyptian deities, adopting the title of pharaoh and portraying themselves in the traditional regalia of Egyptian kings. Yet they also kept one foot firmly planted in their Greek heritage, honoring the Olympian gods and promoting Greek language and customs among the elite. It was a balancing act that would have made a tightrope walker sweat, but it worked. By embracing both traditions, they ensured their dynasty was respected by both Greek settlers and native Egyptians. And then there's Cleopatra Roman VII, the Ptolemaic dynasty's most famous export and a master of ancient PR. Forget Elizabeth Taylor's Hollywood portrayal. Cleopatra was no mere seductress. She was shrewd, multilingual, and politically savvy, speaking at least 9 languages and charming leaders from Rome to the Nile. Her alliances with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony weren't just romantic dalliances. They were strategic moves in a high-stakes game of thrones. Cleopatra knew how to spin a story, presenting herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis and wielding her image like a weapon. She could have taught today's spin doctors a thing or two about crafting a narrative. Despite the glamour and intellect, life in Alexandria wasn't all philosophical debates and glittering ceremonies. The city's diverse population, Greeks, Egyptians, Jews, and others, had to navigate a complex social hierarchy where Greek culture was often seen as superior. Tensions flared, sometimes violently, as different groups jostled for power and recognition. It was a reminder that even the most enlightened societies have their shadows, and Alexandria was no exception. As we marvel at the cultural legacy of Ptolemaic Alexandria, let's remember it was a city of contrasts. brilliance and brutality, harmony and discord. It was a place where the ancient world's greatest minds gathered, yet one where the struggles of everyday life could be as harsh as the desert sun. The Ptolemies left a mark that would echo through history, but it was a legacy built on the shoulders of those who lived, worked, and dreamed in this remarkable city. We've covered the audacious beginnings and cultural complexities of Ptolemaic Egypt, but hold onto your laurel wreaths, because the saga isn't over yet. Cleopatra's rise and fall still loom large on the horizon, promising a finale worthy of a Shakespearean tragedy. So, stay tuned as we delve deeper into the intrigues and ambitions of a dynasty that dared to dream big in a world where the stakes were as high as the sun-drenched pyramids. But before we dive headlong into Cleopatra's dramatic endgame, let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer soap opera that was the Ptolemaic dynasty. Seriously, if family therapy had been a thing in ancient Egypt, the Ptolemies would have needed it on speed dial. We're talking about a royal family where alliances were as fickle as a Nile flood. Betrayals were practically a Sunday hobby, and poisonings were, well, just another Tuesday. Let's set the stage with Ptolemy Roman 12, affectionately nicknamed Orleats, or the flute player, which sounds charming until you realize it was more of a jab at his knack for playing politics than any musical talent. He was Cleopatra's father, and a man who danced to the tune of Rome's demands as if they were the only game in town. The Ptolemies had a complicated relationship with the Romans, kind of like that friend who always borrows money and never pays it back, but you keep them around because they throw great parties. Ptolemy Roman 12 reign wasn't exactly a smooth ride. In 58 BCE, he was unceremoniously booted out of Egypt by his own people, who were sick of his Roman pandering and sky-high taxes. Imagine being so unpopular that your subjects prefer an empty throne. He fled to Rome, a move as bold as it was desperate, and with a little Roman backing and a hefty loan, he managed to claw his way back to power 3 years later. But his comeback tour was short-lived. He died in 51 BCE, leaving his beloved Egypt to Cleopatra Roman 7 and her younger brother Ptolemy Roman 13. Cue the entrance of Cleopatra Roman 7, the final and most famous act in this dynasty's saga. Often reduced to the image of a seductive femme fatale, the real Cleopatra was a political powerhouse and a linguistic prodigy who spoke a dizzying array of languages, including Egyptian, which was a big deal since her predecessors preferred Greek. She wasn't just a pretty face. She was the brains of the operation, navigating the treacherous waters of Roman politics like a seasoned sailor. Now, Cleopatra didn't just stroll into power unopposed. Oh no, dear listener, that would be too simple. She had to co-rule with her brother Ptolemy Roman 13, who, despite being a teenager, was just ambitious enough to be a problem. Their sibling rivalry was less friendly competition and more how do I get you exiled, because Cleopatra was forced to flee to Syria when tensions hit a boiling point. She wasn't gone for long, though. Cleopatra was nothing if not resourceful. She returned to Egypt with an army in 48 BCE, ready to reclaim her rightful place. Enter Julius Caesar, the Roman general who would become Cleopatra's ticket back to power. Cleopatra's legendary introduction to Caesar, smuggled into his quarters rolled up in a carpet, wasn't just a dramatic entrance. It was a masterstroke of political theater. Forget dinner and a movie. Cleopatra knew how to make an impression. Her alliance with Caesar was both a romantic and strategic affair. With Caesar's support, she outmaneuvered Ptolemy Roman 13, who met his end in the Nile, presumably while trying to escape the mess he'd helped create. With Ptolemy Roman 13 out of the picture, Cleopatra was once again queen, this time co-ruling with her even younger brother, Ptolemy Roman 14. But let's be honest, Ptolemy Roman 14 was more of a figurehead than a ruler. Cleopatra was the one calling the shots, and she had no intention of letting anyone, especially her brother, get in her way. Her relationship with Caesar bore a son, Caesarion, whom she named co-ruler, effectively sidelining Ptolemy Roman 14. For Cleopatra, power was a family affair, and she played the game better than most. Fast forward to 44 BCE, and Julius Caesar is assassinated on the Ides of March, a curveball that would shake the Roman world to its core. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, quickly aligned herself with Mark Antony, one of the most powerful men in Rome and a key player in the civil war that followed Caesar's death. Antony and Cleopatra's relationship was the stuff of legend. a whirlwind of passion and politics that would inspire poets and playwrights for centuries. But let's not get swept away by the romance. For Cleopatra, this was business as much as pleasure. She needed Antony's military might to secure her throne and protect Egypt's interests. Antony, in turn, needed Cleopatra's wealth to fund his campaigns. It was a match made in political heaven or hell, depending on your point of view. Their union produced 3 children, and with each birth, Cleopatra's grip on power seemed to tighten. Yet, the alliance with Antony would ultimately be her undoing. As the power struggle in Rome intensified, Octavian, Caesar's heir and Antony's rival, seized the opportunity to paint Cleopatra as the villain in his narrative. She was the foreign queen, the seductress who had bewitched Antony and turned him against Rome. The final act of this tragic tale came at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, a decisive confrontation that saw Octavian's forces crush Antony and Cleopatra's navy. Defeat was a bitter pill to swallow, but Cleopatra wasn't about to go down without a fight. Returning to Alexandria, she attempted to broker an alliance with Octavian, but the writing was on the wall. With Antony's suicide leaving her isolated and vulnerable, Cleopatra faced a choice: surrender or stage one final act of defiance. Choosing the latter, Cleopatra orchestrated her own death, allegedly by the bite of an asp, though historians debate the veracity of this tale. Whether by snake or poison, her demise was the ultimate power play, denying Octavian the satisfaction of parading her through Rome as a trophy. Cleopatra's death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and with it, the last vestiges of pharaonic Egypt. Rome absorbed Egypt into its empire, and the Ptolemies faded into history. Yet Cleopatra's legacy endures, not just as a tragic figure of romance, but as a shrewd leader who defied the odds to hold her own in a man's world. Her life was emblematic of the Ptolemaic dynasty itself, a blend of ambition and intrigue, power and peril, brilliance and betrayal. Cleopatra was more than a love story. She was a testament to the enduring allure and complexity of Egypt's last great dynasty. So, as we prepare to wrap up this whirlwind tour of the Ptolemaic saga in our final chapter, let's remember that history is never just black and white. It's a tapestry woven from the threads of countless lives, each one contributing to the rich and colorful fabric of the past. Cleopatra's story, and the story of the Ptolemies, is a reminder that behind every legend lies a reality far more fascinating and complex than any myth could capture. Stay tuned for the grand finale, where we'll explore the lasting impact of the Ptolemaic dynasty and its echoes through history. As the curtains closed on Cleopatra's dramatic life, the Ptolemaic dynasty had its own final act to play, one that would see the last remnants of pharaonic Egypt swallowed by the ever-expanding Roman Empire. The truth is, by the time Cleopatra made her famous exit, Egypt was already teetering on the edge, a kingdom caught between the rock of its own internal decay and the hard place of Roman ambition. The Ptolemies, once masters of the Mediterranean chessboard, had become pawns in a larger game. Let's talk economic pressures, because money, or the lack of it, was a significant player in this downfall. The Ptolemaic economy, once a model of efficiency and wealth, had begun to show its cracks. Heavy taxation and economic mismanagement left the once wealthy state struggling to keep up with its Roman neighbors. By the end of Cleopatra's reign, Egypt was less a land of plenty and more a nation scraping the bottom of the treasury barrel. The grain that once filled Roman bellies was now a weapon of economic warfare, wielded by Rome against Egypt. The Ptolemies' failure to modernize their economy and adapt to the new realities of Roman power was as much their undoing as any military defeat. And speaking of military defeats, let's not forget that the Ptolemaic army, which once commanded respect across the Mediterranean, was a shadow of its former self. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE was not just a naval faceplate. It was the final nail in the Ptolemaic coffin. Octavian's forces dismantled what had been one of the last great fleets of the ancient world, leaving Cleopatra and Antony with nowhere to hide. The Ptolemies' inability to maintain a strong, independent military force left them vulnerable to Roman aggression, and in the end, it was the Roman legions marching into Alexandria that sealed Egypt's fate. As Rome's shadow loomed large, Egypt was transformed from a kingdom to a province, and with it, the Ptolemaic dynasty became a footnote in the annals of history. The Roman Empire was a juggernaut, and it had little time for the sentimental trappings of Egyptian royalty. Cleopatra's son, Caesarion, was a potential threat to Octavian's burgeoning power, and in a move that was as much about pragmatism as it was about politics, he was quietly removed from the equation, a stark reminder that in the Game of Thrones, heirs are often expendable. So, what do we make of the Ptolemies' legacy? Were they brilliant rulers who transformed Egypt into a cultural and economic powerhouse, or were they opportunistic interlopers who rode on the coattails of Alexander's empire? The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. The Ptolemies were savvy leaders who understood the power of cultural fusion, blending Greek and Egyptian traditions into a potent mix that captivated the ancient world. They were patrons of the arts and sciences, leaving behind a legacy that would echo through the ages, from the great works of the Library of Alexandria to the architectural wonders of their temples. Yet, for all their achievements, the Ptolemies were also a family mired in intrigue and excess, their rule marked by familial betrayals and political machinations that would make a soap opera writer blush. They were masters of spin, crafting a narrative that painted them as rightful heirs to both Greek and Egyptian legacies. But beneath the gilded surface lay a reality that was far less glamorous. Their reliance on Rome for legitimacy and security was a double-edged sword, one that ultimately cut both ways. In the end, the Ptolemaic dynasty serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of power and the fickle nature of fortune. They remind us that even the mightiest empires can crumble under the weight of their own ambition, and that the sands of history are littered with the ruins of those who dared to dream too big. The Ptolemy story is one of rise and fall, of triumph and tragedy, a testament to the enduring allure of a dynasty that dared to defy the odds. Yet, as we close the book on the Ptolemaic saga, let's remember that history is not just about the powerful and the privileged. It's about the countless individuals who lived, worked, and dreamed in the shadow of the pyramids, who navigated the complexities of life under a dynasty that was as much a part of Egypt's fabric as the Nile itself. The Ptolemies may have been the stars of their own epic, but it was the people of Egypt who kept the show running. So, as we ponder the lessons of the Ptolemaic dynasty, let's take a moment to appreciate the rich tapestry of history they left behind, a tapestry woven with threads of ambition and intrigue, of brilliance and betrayal. It's a story that reminds us that all good things, or at least all interesting things, must come to an end, and that in the grand theatre of history, the final act is often the most revealing. The air in 17th century Istanbul is filled with a symphony of sounds as you step out into the waking city. There's the hawker's cry, the clatter of hooves on cobblestones, and somewhere, the distant call of the muezzin. Today, you're heading to the Topkapi Palace, the nerve center of the Ottoman Empire, where you and countless others serve the whims and fancies of one of the most powerful men on the planet, the Sultan. But before you start polishing your courtly manners, there's the small matter of navigating through the bustling streets of a city that's home to around 700,000 souls. That's right, nearly the population of modern-day Seattle crammed into an urban sprawl where East truly meets West. As you weave through the Grand Bazaar, every step is a reminder of the empire's vast reach. Silks from China, spices from India, furs from Russia, a veritable United Nations of commerce. And you're not just a casual observer. Your livelihood depends on the economic ballet of import and export. But it's not all smooth sailing. The recent influx of silver from the New World has been a double-edged sword. Sure, there's more cash floating around, but inflation is biting harder than a street dog after a long winter. Prices have shot up, and your salary's worth is slipping faster than an eel on a wet deck. The economic engine of the empire might be humming, but it's starting to sound like it needs a tune-up. Arriving at the gates of Topkapi, you're greeted by the sheer scale of the place. Forget the opulent grandeur. It's the bureaucracy that's truly awe-inspiring. The palace is less a single building and more a small city, with over 1,000 rooms, each one bustling with its own set of intrigues and power plays. You're just one cog in this gigantic machine, but don't kid yourself. You're essential. The Sultan's court operates much like a modern corporation, with departments, hierarchies, and yes, office politics that could make Machiavelli blush. As you make your way through the outer courtyards, Past Janissaries standing guard, you think about how the empire is held together. It's not just about military might. It's trade routes, diplomacy, and a dash of good old-fashioned intimidation. The Ottoman Empire is a patchwork quilt of different cultures, languages, and religions, all stitched together under the Sultan's canopy. But don't let the romantic tales fool you. This is no fairy tale sultanate. The court is a hotbed of intrigue, where allegiances shift faster than the sands of the Sahara. You pause to exchange words with a fellow courtier. He's grumbling about the latest tax hike, a necessary evil, he says, to fund the never-ending wars and palace renovations. It's a classic case of robbing Peter to pay Paul, except Peter's a peasant farmer and Paul's a janissary who needs a new pair of boots. You nod sympathetically, secretly noting how everyone's got a gripe these days. The empire might be vast, but resources are stretched thin, and tensions are simmering just beneath the surface. And so, you push forward, deeper into the palace, where the Sultan's shadow looms large over everything. You're keenly aware that being a courtier isn't just about serving tea or fetching slippers. You're a part of the empire's facade, a symbol of its wealth and power. But there's a flip side to every coin. Behind the scenes, whispers of discontent grow louder, and the court's opulence is increasingly seen as decadence by those on the outside looking in. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, you find yourself caught up in the rhythm of court life. The chatter of diplomats, the rustling of robes, the scribbling of quills, each sound a note in the symphony of empire. Yet, amidst the routine, there's a constant undercurrent of uncertainty. You never know when the next political storm might hit, sweeping away those who fail to keep their footing. But for now, you soldier on, one eye on the Sultan and the other on the horizon, ever aware that in this city of contrasts, fortunes can change as swiftly as the Bosphorus currents. As you step further into the palace, that feeling of uncertainty clings to you like the humidity in July. Topkapi is a world unto itself, a kaleidoscope of power plays and whispered secrets that could rival any modern-day political thriller. Beneath the surface of this glittering facade lies a human chessboard where every pawn, rook, and knight is a living, breathing courtier, each with their own ambitions, fears, and expertly concealed daggers. First up in this lineup of illustrious players is Ibrahim, the Grand Vizier. Think of him as the chief operating officer of the empire. He's the Sultan's right-hand man, yet must always remember that his head could roll faster than you can say palace coup. As the Sultan's top advisor, Ibrahim navigates a labyrinth of responsibilities, from overseeing military campaigns to managing state finances. His decisions can make or break the empire, which gives him immense influence. But don't be fooled. It's a double-edged sword. One misstep, one wrong alliance, and he could find himself out of favor and out of a job. In 17th century Istanbul, that usually means out of a life, too. Then there are the eunuchs, the gatekeepers of the Sultan's harem and inner sanctum. They're more than just palace staff. They're spies, confidants, and sometimes kingmakers. As men who are neither fully inside nor outside the power structure, they occupy a unique niche. Their loyalty is often to whoever can promise them the most security and advancement, a precarious balancing act that demands both discretion and cunning. As you might expect, there's no shortage of rumors about these guys. Some say they wield more power than the viziers, others claim they're puppets with no strings of their own. The truth, probably somewhere in between, like most things in this world. Speaking of strings, let's not forget the other courtiers, each with their own tangled web of alliances and enmities. From language specialists to tax collectors, these folks are the empire's middle management. Their main job, to keep things running smoothly while simultaneously watching their own backs. It's like being in a never-ending episode of Survivor. But instead of immunity idols, you're vying for the Sultan's favor. Play your cards right, and you might find yourself promoted to a key position. Slip up, and you could be shipped off to some far-flung corner of the empire, or worse. Now, let's delve into the Sultan's divan, the council where the empire's most crucial decisions are made. Picture a medieval board meeting with higher stakes and more ornate robes. This isn't just a room full of yes-men nodding along to the Sultan's every word. The divan is a dynamic arena of debate and diplomacy, where policies that affect millions are hammered out. Picture it, a room filled with the sound of quills scratching on parchment, the hushed whispers of negotiation, and the occasional raised voice as tempers flare. It's not all decorum and deference. Sometimes it's as much about who can shout the loudest as it is about logical argument. Decisions here aren't made in a vacuum. Every choice has ripple effects, impacting trade routes, military strategies, and international relations. The Sultan might be the final authority, but he relies on his advisors to feed him the information he needs to make those calls. These meetings are a masterclass in the art of persuasion and strategy, but let's not romanticize it too much. Often, the decisions that come out of the divan are as much about maintaining the status quo as they are about innovation or change. If you're expecting opulence in these meetings, think again. Sure, the room is decorated with lush carpets and intricate tiles, but the real wealth is in the ideas exchanged and the power brokered. Here, the Sultan's word is law, but even he must sometimes bend to the reality of politics and power balances. The divan is where the empire's heartbeat can be felt most strongly, a place where the pulse of the Ottoman world is measured and directed. While it's easy to get swept up in the grandeur and intrigue of court life, remember that beneath the silk and gold, there's a hard reality. The opulence serves a purpose. It's a display of power intended to awe both domestic subjects and foreign dignitaries. But don't let the glitter blind you to the grit. The truth is, the court is as much about survival as it is about service. One wrong move, one careless word, and you could find yourself on the wrong side of a locked door or a sharpened blade. As the day wears on, the palace buzzes with the ebb and flow of its inhabitants, each one playing their part in this grand performance. The sun casts long shadows across the courtyards, a reminder that time waits for no one, not even the Sultan. In this world, every decision, every alliance, every whispered conversation can shape the course of history. It's a game of high stakes, where the pieces are living, breathing people, and the board is the empire itself. Yet, within this maze of political machinations and power struggles, there's an undeniable allure. The court is a place where dreams can be realized and legacies forged. It's a world where the ambitious can rise and the fortunate can fall. But it's also a place where the lines between friend and foe blur, where the glittering facade hides a reality as sharp as the Sultan's scimitar. It's a world that demands your full attention, your sharpest wits, and your utmost discretion. Welcome to the court of the Ottoman Sultan, where the music may be enchanting, but the dance is anything but simple. As the court's clock ticks toward midday, the tantalizing aroma of spices wafts through the palace corridors. It's lunchtime at the Topkapi Palace, where the menu is as eclectic as the empire itself. This isn't your average sandwich break. It's a culinary symphony orchestrated by the Ashsabashi, the head chef, whose role is as critical as any minister in the divan. Now, you might think the Sultan's meals are all about extravagance, but let's slice through that myth. Sure, there's opulence, but it's more about showcasing the empire's diversity than merely gluttony. The meal is a tapestry of flavors, with each dish telling its own story of cultural confluence. Picture this: pilaf rice soaked in the rich history of Persia, spiced meats that echo the tang of North African markets, and desserts sweeter than a diplomat's promise. This isn't just food. It's diplomacy served on a silver platter. To feed the Sultan and his court is no small feat. The logistics are mind-boggling. Think about it. An empire stretching from the Balkans to the Arabian deserts, each region contributing its own ingredients. The spice trade, a nerve as crucial as any artery in the empire's body, pumps life through the kitchens. Cardamom from the Indian subcontinent, saffron from Iran, and cinnamon from Sri Lanka. Each spice is a tiny ambassador, a testament to the empire's far-reaching grasp. Behind this Epicurean display is a small army of kitchen staff, with the Ashsabashi at the helm. This isn't a job for the faint-hearted. Managing the Sultan's kitchen is akin to captaining a ship through stormy seas. One bad meal, one off flavor, and it's not just your reputation on the line. It could be your head. Being a chef here is more about politics than paprika, and the Ashsabashi knows it. They must navigate the labyrinth of court politics with the dexterity of a tightrope walker. But it's not just about the food, oh no. As you savor the Sultan's table, let's take a detour into the world of art and architecture. A feast for the eyes, if you will. The 17th century was something of a renaissance for the Ottomans. Islamic art and architecture flourished, with the classical Ottoman style reaching its zenith. Take a stroll past the Sultan Ahmed Mosque, commonly known as the Blue Mosque. It's a marvel of symmetry and elegance, its domes and minarets piercing the Istanbul sky like a stone symphony. Built between 1609 and 1616, it's an architectural love letter to the divine. Its walls adorned with over 20 handmade Iznik tiles. This era saw an artistic convergence, where Islamic art absorbed influences from Byzantine and Persian traditions. Calligraphy, geometric patterns, floral motifs, each element was a brushstroke in the grand canvas of cultural exchange. The artists of the time were like cultural DJs, sampling and remixing styles to create something uniquely Ottoman. And let's not forget the role of the court as a patron of the arts. The Sultan's favor could make or break an artist's career faster than you can say miniature painting. Speaking of miniatures, these intricate illustrations were the Instagram of their day, capturing everything from court life to epic battles in vivid detail. Artists like Levny and Matraxi Nasser were the influencers of their time, wielding brushes instead of hashtags. This wasn't just art for art's sake. It was a medium for propaganda, storytelling, and documentation. And while the art was beautiful, it also served a function, reinforcing the power and prestige of the Sultan. Let's peel back the lacquer on this gilded canvas, though. The art and architecture weren't just about aesthetics. They were about control. The Sultan's palaces and mosques weren't mere buildings. They were statements of power, designed to awe both the faithful and the foreign. Every arch, every tile, was a reminder of the Sultan's divine right to rule, a visual sermon preached to the populace. As you wander through the palace gardens, the sun casting dappled shadows on the cobblestones, it's easy to get lost in the romance of it all. But remember, behind the beauty lies a hard reality. The empire's grandeur was built on the backs of countless laborers, artisans, and slaves, whose stories often go untold. This cultural tapestry, woven with threads from every corner of the empire, is as much about exploitation as it is about exchange. And just like that, lunchtime is over. The plates are cleared, the spices tucked away for another day. The court returns to its business, the ashsabashi retreats to the kitchens, and the artists to their studios. But the echoes of this cultural symphony linger, a reminder of an empire at its peak, complex, contradictory, and captivating. As the afternoon sun creeps across the sky, the day's next act awaits, and with it, the ever-unfolding drama of the Ottoman court. As the afternoon sun casts its golden glow over the sprawling Topkapi, you step into the world of the empire's most formidable force, the Janissaries. These guys aren't your average foot soldiers. Nope, they're the elite troops, the Sultan's personal pit bulls, if you will, trained to be as sharp as the blades they wield. Yet, even in their disciplined ranks, there's a twist, a paradox that keeps the Sultan awake at night. Let's dig into what makes these warriors tick. Originally formed from the Devshirme system, essentially a human tax where Christian boys from the Balkans were plucked from their families and converted to Islam. The Janissaries were more than just soldiers. They were a social experiment, a melting pot of cultures and loyalties, with the Sultan as their adoptive patriarch. By the 17th century, they numbered around 40,000, a staggering force considering the challenges of feeding, training, and equipping such a battalion. Imagine footing the bill for that many mouths and muskets. In today's currency, you're looking at costs equivalent to several $1 billion annually. Ouch. These soldiers were the embodiment of the empire's might, a human wall standing between the Sultan and his foes. Yet their loyalty was a double-edged sword. On one hand, they were bound to the Sultan, serving as his elite guard. On the other, their immense power meant they could easily turn from protectors to predators. Over time, their influence swelled like a river in flood, making them both a shield for and a threat to the throne. It was like giving your bodyguard the keys to your kingdom and hoping he doesn't change the locks. The Janissaries' power wasn't just felt on the battlefield. Their influence seeped into the empire's political and economic fabric like ink on parchment. They played kingmaker in more than one palace coup, proving that even the mightiest sultan had to tread carefully around his own troops. Their demands for better pay and privileges often echoed through the corridors of power, and ignoring them was an invitation to chaos. It was a delicate dance of power and politics, with the sultan's throne sometimes teetering like a chair with one leg missing. But let's pop the bubble of invincibility surrounding these warriors. Sure, they were elite, but they weren't infallible. The myth of their unbeatable prowess was a convenient narrative, a bit of PR that kept enemies at bay and subjects in awe. Yet, The reality of 17th century warfare was far from romantic. The age of gunpowder had turned battles into noisy, chaotic affairs, where the strategy often involved more luck than genius. The Janissaries were adapting, but the world of war was evolving even faster. Picture a battlefield not as a chessboard of noble knights and gallant charges, but as a cacophony of gunfire, smoke, and confusion. Tactics that once relied on the strength of cavalry and swords were becoming obsolete, replaced by the grim efficiency of firearms and cannons. The Janissaries had muskets, sure, but so did their rivals. It was a game of who could reload faster, who could maintain discipline amid the chaos. The battlefield was a brutal equalizer, where even the most disciplined troops could find their lines broken by a well-aimed cannonball or a surprise flank. And let's not forget the financial burden of sustaining this military juggernaut. The cost of war was astronomical. Every campaign was a roll of the dice, with the stakes being the empire's coffers and the sultan's reputation. Victories brought spoils and glory, but defeats were costly in both treasure and morale. The treasury bled gold to keep the Janissaries equipped and ready, and the ripple effects could be felt throughout the empire. Taxes went up, inflation soared, and the economic strain began to show like cracks in a porcelain vase. Military campaigns also played a pivotal role in shaping domestic politics. Victories could bolster a sultan's standing, shore up his legitimacy, and silence dissent. But a string of defeats could do the opposite, emboldening rivals and fanning the flames of unrest. The Janissaries were often at the center of these political storms, their support crucial for any sultan hoping to maintain his grip on power. It was a high-stakes poker game, where the sultan's hand was only as strong as the loyalty of his troops. As we peel back the layers of this military machine, it's clear that the Janissaries were a microcosm of the empire itself, complex, contradictory, and constantly evolving. Their world was one of discipline and danger, where allegiances could shift as swiftly as the winds of the Bosphorus. They were the empire's sword and shield, but also a reminder of its vulnerabilities, a living testament to the delicate balance of power that defined the Ottoman court. So, as the afternoon sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the palace grounds, you've had a glimpse into the realm where military might intersects with political intrigue. The Janissaries are both the empire's strength and its Achilles' heel, a force to be reckoned with in a world where power is as fluid as the waters surrounding this ancient city. Their story is far from over, and as the day marches on, the court's intricate dance between loyalty and ambition continues, setting the stage for the next act in this grand historical drama. As the sun begins its descent over Istanbul, casting a warm amber hue over the Topkapi Palace, the rhythm of the empire shifts from the clamor of military might to the quiet hum of scholarly pursuit. This is the time when the Ottomans flex their intellectual muscles, showcasing achievements that rival their military exploits. You see, the 17th century wasn't just about swords and scimitars. It was also an era of celestial exploration and groundbreaking medicine. Let's talk astronomy, shall we? Forget stargazing as a mere pastime. This was serious business. Ottoman scholars like Taqi al-Din, the empire's answer to Galileo, were busy measuring the heavens with an accuracy that would make today's astronomers nod in approval. The Istanbul Observatory, founded in 1577, was a hub of astronomical research, equipped with instruments that were the cutting-edge tech of their day. Think giant astrolabes and sophisticated armillary spheres, 19th century names for what we now call telescope forerunners. Taqi al-Din even made meticulous observations of the Great Comet of 1577, jotting down details that would later become part of the global astronomical dialogue. But here's where it gets juicy. Taqi al-Din's work wasn't just about satisfying cosmic curiosity. The Ottomans used astronomy as a tool for both navigation and political legitimacy. The Sultan was often depicted as a cosmic ruler whose reign harmonized with the celestial order. Talk about divine, right with a side of astrology. This wasn't just for show. Accurate celestial navigation was crucial for trade and military expeditions, making these scholarly pursuits a cornerstone of the empire's power. Now, shift your gaze from the stars to the human body, because Ottoman medicine was nothing to sneeze at either. Ottoman physicians were making strides that would lay foundations for modern medicine. Figures like Sheriff din Sabancoglu were penning medical texts that combined Islamic medical knowledge with insights from classical Greek sources. Picture this: surgical techniques described in vivid detail, complete with illustrations that look like they belong in a modern anatomy textbook. But here's the twist. Medicine was also a realm of political intrigue. The Sultan's physician wasn't just a healer, but a court insider, privy to the most intimate details of the royal family's health. This made the physician's loyalty as critical as his skills, a fact not lost on the Sultan, who knew the right potion could either cure or kill. Medicine was a double-edged scalpel, wielded with precision, but always with an eye on the delicate balance of favor and fear. As evening falls, the cultural tapestry of the Ottoman Empire becomes even more vibrant. You've got poets like Fuseli and Baki spinning words into gold, their verses celebrated as much for their beauty as their cunning political commentary. Poetry was the empire's Twitter, a platform for both praise and veiled critique, where a well-placed metaphor could win you favor or land you in hot water. The court was as much a literary salon as a political center, with the Sultan himself often dabbling in verse, a nod to the notion that power and art were two sides of the same coin. Now, let's not ignore the elephant in the room, or rather, the myths that have grown like ivy over the ruins of history. The Ottoman court was romanticized as a place of eternal opulence and unyielding power, but peel back the layers, and you'll find a more complex picture. Sure, the architecture was stunning, the wealth dazzling, but beneath the surface lay tensions and contradictions. The court's splendor was both a stage and a snare, designed to dazzle foreign dignitaries while concealing the cracks in the empire's foundation. As the 17th century gives way to the 18th, the Ottoman court begins to evolve. The world is changing, and the empire must adapt or risk becoming history's next cautionary tale. The Janissaries, once the empire's backbone, grow restless, their loyalty now more volatile than ever. The sultans, once demigods in human form, find their power increasingly checked by ambitious viziers and the rising influence of European powers. The court, a symbol of timeless continuity, becomes a battleground for innovation and tradition, a tightrope walk across the chasm of modernity. So, as the day draws to a close, what's the legacy of these courtiers, these architects of an empire's grandeur? They were the weavers of a narrative that still captivates the world, a tale of might and majesty, of art and ambition. Yet, they were also human, navigating a world as unpredictable as the Bosphorus currents. The myths endure, like echoes in the corridors of Topkapi, reminding us that history is written not just in stone, but in the whispers of those who dared to dream and the shadows of those who dared not. In the end, the Ottoman court was a microcosm of the empire itself, a dance of power and politics, of culture and conquest. Its legacy is one of complexity and contradiction, a reminder that the past is never as simple as it appears. As the stars twinkle over the Golden Horn, you find yourself pondering the lessons of history, realizing that in this world of shifting sands and timeless tales, the only constant is change. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the most enduring legacy of all. In the heart of South America, where rugged mountains kiss the sky and valleys carve their way through ancient landscapes, the Inca Empire sprawled across vast expanses like an elaborate tapestry. Now, if you think of the Incas as just those folks with a penchant for building fancy stone cities high in the Andes, let's broaden that horizon a bit. The Incas were like the ultimate overachievers of the pre-Columbian world, and they had a road network that made even the Romans look like they were playing with toy cars in a sandbox. Let's talk numbers. The Incas constructed more than 25,000 miles of roadways. And no, these weren't your average dirt paths. These roads wove through some of the most unforgiving terrains on the planet, from the jagged peaks of the Andes to the dense Amazonian jungles. The Incas, with their penchant for drama, didn't just build roads. They sculpted them out of mountains, laid them across deserts, and strung them over ravines with rope bridges that would make Indiana Jones sweat. Now, why did the Incas go to all this trouble? Was it just for the bragging rights? Not quite. The Incas had a sprawling empire to manage, stretching from modern-day Colombia in the north down to Chile in the south. This wasn't just a backyard project. It was a logistical marvel. Their roads were crucial for connecting the empire's administrative, military, and economic hubs. Imagine trying to run a massive empire without a decent highway system. The Incan roads were the veins through which the empire's lifeblood flowed. And speaking of lifeblood, let's not forget the Chasquis, those legendary Incan runners who were the human equivalent of the Pony Express. These guys were the real MVPs of the Incan communication network, sprinting along these roads day and night. They passed messages and goods across vast distances with the efficiency of a courier service, minus the tracking app. But more on those guys in the next episode. The beauty of the Incan roads wasn't just in their utility, but in their audacity. They defied conventional engineering wisdom, much like trying to build a skyscraper on a sandy beach. The Incas didn't have the wheel, draft animals, or even a written language that we know of. Yet they managed to pull off this engineering feat with sheer human grit and an uncanny understanding of their environment. In a world where a broken wagon wheel could spell disaster, the Incas designed roads that were adaptable to every kind of terrain. The roads were paved with stone and often featured staircases to tackle steep inclines. Because why zigzag when you can go straight up? Right. They also had drainage systems to counter the heavy Andean rains, which is more than you can say for some modern city streets. These roads weren't just about getting from point A to point B. They were about control. The Inca road network was a tool of empire building, a way to project power across a vast and diverse landscape. This network allowed the Incas to mobilize their armies quickly, to deploy workers for massive state projects, and to integrate conquered peoples into their empire. It was both a literal and metaphorical path to power. So, what happens when you build such an impressive road network? People start telling stories, of course. Myths and legends about the Incan roads abound, some claiming they were paved in gold or that they could be seen from space. Spoiler alert, they weren't paved in gold, and you can't spot them from orbit. But they were a marvel of human ingenuity, a testament to the Incan ability to thrive in seemingly impossible conditions. In the end, the Incan roads weren't just pathways. They were the empire's nervous system, connecting its remote fingers to the brain. And while the roads themselves may now be overgrown or eroded by time, their legacy endures. They remind us of a civilization that dared to carve its mark into the Andes, one stone at a time. And that, my friends, is not just history. It's a lesson in what humans can achieve when they refuse to be limited by the world around them. The Incas had the audacity to etch their dreams into the Andes, one stone at a time, but let's take a step back and peek behind the curtain at how this all came together. Spoiler alert, it wasn't magic or aliens. It was a seriously impressive feat of human organization and ingenuity. Imagine the logistics of building a road network that spanned over 25,000 miles without the modern-day conveniences of GPS, bulldozers, or even a cup of coffee to keep you going. It was a bit more intricate than a community service project, and it all started with a little something called the *** system. The *** was a labor tax, a sort of mandatory public service gig that every able-bodied Incan male had to participate in. And before you start picturing a laid-back volunteer shift at the local soup kitchen, let's be clear. This was serious business. The *** was all about mobilizing the workforce to build infrastructure, serve in the military, or work on agricultural projects. It was the backbone of the Incan economy, and it functioned with a level of precision that would make modern project managers weep with envy. This labor force was organized with military efficiency. Workers were divided into groups, each led by a foreman who ensured that productivity remained high. These were the folks who turned the Incas' ambitious plans into stone-cold reality. The laborers weren't just left to their own devices either. They were provided with food, clothing, and tools by the state, creating a well-fed, well-equipped, and highly motivated workforce. And as a nice bonus, participating in the *** was a way of earning social prestige. Because who doesn't love a little recognition for their hard work? Now, let's talk materials. The Incas didn't have the luxury of popping down to the local hardware store for supplies. They had to work with what they had, which fortunately for them was a lot of stone. A whole lot of stone. In fact, the Andes are practically made of the stuff. The Incas used locally sourced materials, a practice that's very trendy today, but was downright essential back then. They quarried stones from nearby mountains and riverbeds, using them to pave roads and construct retaining walls. These stones were then meticulously fitted together, often without the use of mortar, in a technique that has left modern-day archaeologists scratching their heads in admiration. And speaking of admiration, let's not forget the roads' durability. These roads weren't just about getting a llama from point A to point B. They had to withstand the test of time and the elements. The Incas designed roads that were not only functional but resilient. In areas prone to flooding, they built raised causeways and implemented drainage systems that were surprisingly sophisticated. In the mountains, where landslides and erosion were a constant threat, they built retaining walls and terracing to stabilize the slopes. It was like playing a game of Tetris with giant rocks and mudslides. Now, I know what you're thinking. All this for some roads. But these weren't just any roads. They were the arteries of an empire, and the Incas had a knack for multitasking. The road network wasn't just about transportation. It was about control. It allowed the Incas to move armies quickly, to collect taxes efficiently, and to integrate newly conquered peoples into the empire. The roads were a tool of empire building, an extension of the Incas' power across a rugged landscape. Of course, where there's a grand narrative of triumph, there's always a bit of mythic seasoning. Some tales suggest the Incas had divine guidance in their road-building endeavors, a little celestial GPS, if you will. While these stories add a dash of mystique, the reality is grounded in hard work, engineering savvy, and a deep understanding of their environment. The Incas were master planners, able to see the big picture while managing the smallest details, an approach that ensured their roads not only survived, but thrived. So, what's the takeaway here? The Incan road network wasn't just a testament to what humans can achieve when they refuse to be limited by their world. It was a masterclass in resource management and logistical genius. The Incas built roads that could handle everything from their precious llamas to the ebb and flow of empire itself, all while contending with some of the harshest terrains on Earth. These paths weren't just practical. They were the embodiment of Incan ambition and tenacity, a legacy carved into the very bones of the Andes. As we wrap up this deep dive into the nuts and bolts of Incan road construction, let's leave those myths behind and appreciate the sheer human effort involved. It's a story of sweat, stone, and savvy, a narrative that continues to resonate through history as a reminder of what can be accomplished when determination meets ingenuity. But we're not done yet. Stay tuned, because coming up, we'll take a closer look at those legendary chasquis and how they turned this stone network into a living, breathing communication marvel. Now, let's lace up our sandals and sprint into the world of the chasquis, the Incan relay runners who were the empire's speedy messengers. Think of them as the ancient world's FedEx, with a dash of Olympic athlete and a sprinkle of Houdini's sleight of hand. These guys were the backbone of the Incan communication system, racing across those meticulously crafted roads with messages tucked safely in their quippers, a series of knotted strings that served as the Incas' binary code. Forget telepathy. This was communication at its most tangible and muscular. The chasquis were stationed every few miles across the road network, ready to relay messages with the swiftness of a viral tweet. Picture this. A chasqui would sprint full tilt for a few miles, then pass the message baton to the next runner, keeping the information flowing like a well-oiled machine. This relay system could transmit messages at lightning speed, covering hundreds of miles in just a day or two, and they did all this without the convenience of energy drinks or fancy running shoes. Just raw stamina and sheer willpower. But let's not romanticize it too much. As with many things in the Inca Empire, the chasqui system was about more than just efficient communication. It was about control. The ability to send messages rapidly across vast distances allowed the emperor to maintain a tight grip on his sprawling domain. It was a way of saying, I may be hundreds of miles away, but I can still make my presence felt. In essence, it was a tool of imperial power, a way to ensure that every corner of the empire was singing from the same hymn sheet, whether they wanted to or not. While the romantic notion of chasquis dashing through the Andes has its appeal, let's not overlook the grueling reality of their lives. These runners were essentially on call 24/7, always ready to spring into action. It's easy to imagine them as ancient superheroes, but the truth is they were more like human postal workers, albeit ones with calves of steel. And while the life of a chasqui might not have been glamorous, it was certainly prestigious. Being a chasqui was an esteemed position, a role reserved for the fittest and fastest young men. It was an honor to serve the Empire in this capacity, though I'm sure it came with its fair share of blisters. Now, onto the myths. Ah, myths. Those tantalizing tales that suggest the Incas had telepathic abilities, communicating with each other through sheer force of mental will. It's a lovely idea, isn't it? But let's leave mind-reading to the realms of science fiction and focus on the real marvel here, the chasquis and their quippers. These knotted strings were the Incan answer to the written word, encoding complex information in a tactile form. The chasquis carried these quippers as they ran, ensuring that the emperor's orders, tax records, and census data reached their destinations intact. In a world without paper or writing, this was an ingenious solution to the communication conundrum. But why stop at communication? The roads were also vital arteries for trade. The empire's economic lifeblood pulsed through these pathways as goods and resources flowed from region to region. Llamas, the Incas' trusty pack animals, trod these roads laden with textiles, pottery, and foodstuffs. The roads facilitated the movement of goods across the empire's diverse landscapes, from the coastal deserts to the lush Amazonian fringes. This trade network allowed the Incas to exploit regional specialties, ensuring that each part of the empire contributed to the whole. It was a bit like a giant, state-run farmers' market, minus the haggling. And let's not forget the road's role in military logistics. The Incan army was a formidable force, and these roads allowed it to mobilize rapidly, projecting power across the empire's vast territories. When unrest flared up in a distant province, the emperor could dispatch troops with the flick of his wrist, knowing they'd reach their destination with speed and efficiency. The roads weren't just about moving soldiers, though. They were about maintaining stability, asserting control, and reminding everyone who was boss. So, while the chasquis and the road network might seem like the stuff of legends, they were very much grounded in the practicalities of empire building. The roads were the lifelines of the Incan state, connecting its people and resources in a web of economic and political control. They were a testament to the Incas' ability to harness human potential, turning raw muscle and strategic planning into a cohesive system that held an empire together. As we delve deeper into the political and social implications of the road network, it's clear that these paths were more than mere thoroughfares. They were the veins and arteries of a civilization that understood the power of connection, both literal and metaphorical. The roads were the empire's nervous system, transmitting orders, goods, and people with a precision that kept the Incan world in motion. But let's not get too misty-eyed here. The reality was that this system relied on a vast network of laborers, runners, and officials, all working in concert to maintain the empire's dominance. It was a testament to human organization and ingenuity, yes, but also to the Incas' ability to marshal resources and impose their will on the landscape. As we wrap up this section, we've only just scratched the surface of the Incan road network's political and social implications. There's still more to explore: the economic intricacies, the integration of conquered peoples, and the cultural significance of these pathways. So, stay tuned as we continue to unravel the story of the Incan Empire, one stone-paved road at a time. As we venture into the economic heart of the Inca Empire, let's tackle the notion of wealth in a land where gold was as common as a selfie stick at a tourist spot. Sure, the Incas had gold, plenty of it, enough to make a pirate's eyes pop, but their real riches lay in something far less shiny. Think of it as the ancient version of a diversified portfolio. Their economy was a finely tuned machine that hummed along thanks to their roads, labor systems, and a little economic wizardry. First up, let's talk roads again. But this time, we're looking at them through the lens of an ancient economist. The Incan road network wasn't just a means for runners to get their cardio in or for armies to flex their muscles. These roads were the superhighways of trade, allowing goods to flow like water from one region to another. Picture this. The Incan Empire was a sprawling quilt of climates and resources. You've got coastal regions teeming with fish, highlands bursting with potatoes and quinoa, and jungle areas rich in tropical fruits and coca leaves. The roads tied all these disparate patches together, enabling a bustling exchange of goods that made the Incan economy one of the most robust in the ancient world. And it wasn't just about having the goods, it was about moving them efficiently. Enter the llama, the unsung hero of Andean logistics. These sturdy creatures were the trucks of the Incan economy, hauling everything from textiles to foodstuffs across the empire. A single llama could carry about 50 pounds, and while that might not sound like much, a caravan of these fluffy beasts could transport a significant haul. The roads were essential for these caravans, providing stable routes through treacherous terrain. It was like the Oregon Trail, but with fewer dysentery outbreaks and more alpacas. Now, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of Incan economic policies, because who doesn't love a good tax story? The Incas had this clever system called the asterisk mida asterisk, which we touched on earlier. But here's the twist. It wasn't just about building roads. The asterisk mida asterisk was a cornerstone of the Incan economy, providing labor for a variety of state projects, including agriculture, mining, and craftsmanship. In return, the state took care of its workers, supplying them with the essentials of life. It was like a state-run welfare system, minus the paperwork and waiting lines. This labor system allowed the Incas to produce and store vast quantities of goods, which they meticulously managed through a network of storehouses called asterisk calcas asterisk. These were the Incan version of a Costco, minus the membership fees. The stored goods were used to feed the army, support workers during their asterisk mida asterisk service, and provide for the population during times of scarcity. This stockpiling was crucial in a region prone to environmental challenges like droughts and floods. The Incas had a plan B and C, and probably a D too. But what about the shiny stuff? The gold and silver that had become synonymous with Incan wealth? Here's where we start myth-busting. While the Incas certainly had these precious metals, they weren't the backbone of the economy. Gold was more about religious and ceremonial purposes than currency. In fact, the concept of money as we know it didn't exist in the Incan world. Instead, wealth was measured in resources and labor, things that had real, tangible value in their society. Now, let's take a look at how the Incas kept this economic engine purring. The empire was divided into 4 regions, or asterisk sias asterisk, each contributing its unique resources to the whole. This regional specialization meant that every part of the empire depended on the others, creating a web of interdependence that glued the empire together. It was a bit like a family potluck, where everyone brings a dish, and if you don't, you're left with just Aunt Edna's Jell-O salad. The Incan economy was also notable for its focus on redistribution. The state played the role of middleman, collecting goods and resources from across the empire and redistributing them as needed. This system ensured that even the most remote communities had access to the essentials, fostering a sense of unity and collective responsibility. It's an approach that might make even the most hardened modern economist shed a tear of envy or skepticism, depending on their worldview. And let's not forget the role of agriculture in all this. The Incas were agricultural innovators, cultivating a variety of crops that have since become global staples. Potatoes, maize, and quinoa were their bread and butter, quite literally. But the real genius was in their farming techniques. They used terracing to maximize arable land in the mountainous terrain and developed sophisticated irrigation systems to combat the Andean climate. It was like a masterclass in sustainable farming, centuries before it became trendy. So, while the roads facilitated trade and the asterisk mida asterisk kept the workforce humming, the real magic of the Incan economy was its ability to adapt and thrive in a landscape that was as challenging as it was breathtaking. It was a system that valued resourcefulness and community over individual wealth, a lesson that, perhaps, has echoes for us today. As we leave behind the glittering myths of gold and delve deeper into the economic intricacies of the Incan world, it's clear that this was a civilization that understood the power of infrastructure, social organization, and collective effort. The Incas weren't just building roads and empires. They were crafting a society that could withstand the test of time and the whims of nature. As we continue this journey, we'll explore even more about how their economic prowess shaped their empire and left a legacy that continues to intrigue and inspire. Stay tuned for the next leg of our historical adventure, where we'll dive into the cultural and social fabric that made the Incan Empire tick. As we continue this journey into the heart of the Incan Empire, let's not kid ourselves. The Incas weren't just about quinoa and llamas. No, they were building a civilization that would make even the most ambitious city planner break into a cold sweat. But how did this grand tapestry fare when the Spanish conquistadors crashed the party? Spoiler alert. Like most epic tales, it wasn't all glory and gold. Enter the Spanish, stage left, circa 1532. Armed with steel, gunpowder, and a taste for conquest, they were the ultimate empire crashers. The Incas, despite their technological genius, faced an enemy with different tricks up their iron sleeves. It's like bringing an abacus to a computer hacking competition. The Spaniards weren't just any invaders. They were a force that fused military might with a knack for exploiting local power struggles. Their arrival was the equivalent of a wrecking ball swinging through the Incan Empire, and the roads, those veins of Incan ingenuity, were about to witness their toughest test yet. Now, you might think that the road network gave the Incas a fighting chance. After all, these were pathways that could support the rapid movement of troops and resources. But here's the rub. The same roads that held the empire together also made it vulnerable. The Spanish quickly realized this and used the network as a convenient interstate highway system to move their forces. Talk about a backfire. It's a stark reminder that what builds an empire can just as easily dismantle it. As the Spanish advanced, the Incas tried to rally their forces, but internal divisions and the unfamiliarity with European warfare strategies proved too much. The mighty Incan roads, which had seemed like arteries of immortality, now facilitated their rapid downfall. Yet, despite the devastation, these roads endured, a silent testament to a civilization that once thrived in the harshest of environments. Fast forward a few centuries, and you might wonder, what do these ancient roads have to teach us? For one, they remind us of the power of adapting to one's environment. The Incas mastered this art, building roads that respected the landscape rather than bulldozing through it. Modern infrastructure planners, take note. Sometimes, the best path is the one that works with nature, not against it. Moreover, the Incan road network was a marvel of resource management. They used local materials, maintained their paths meticulously, and designed them to last. Imagine if today's pothole-ridden streets were built with the same foresight. It's a lesson in sustainability and longevity that modern engineers could learn from. But let's not romanticize this too much. The Incan Empire was no utopia. It was a realm built on the backs of a labor force operating under the asterisk-midder-asterisk system, a society where the state controlled nearly every aspect of life. The roads might have been marvels of engineering, but they were also instruments of power and control. The legacy of the Incans is a complex one, full of innovation, but also underpinned by the harsh realities of imperial dominance. So, as we pull the curtain on this fascinating chapter of history, what's the takeaway? The Incan roads and their runners were more than just a means to an end. They were the embodiment of an empire's ambition and its Achilles heel. They whisper tales of a society that dared to dream big, but also remind us of the fragility that comes with overreaching power. In the end, the Incan roads weren't just pathways across the Andes. They were a bold statement of human tenacity, a stone-carved legacy that outlived the empire that built them. While the Spanish conquest might have dimmed the Incan star, the roads remain, a silent testimony to a civilization that, for a moment in time, seemed capable of bending the world to its will. And there, my friends, lies the true lesson, that in the grand tapestry of history, even the mightiest roads lead somewhere. Whether they pave the way to glory or ruin depends on who walks them and why. And that, in the end, is the real story of the Incan roads, a tale of triumph, tragedy, and the timeless dance between ambition and fate.